Tonight, Batman follows Jim Gordon as he takes on the identity of Batman and everything that entails. Detective Comics follows Harvey Bullock as he deals with Jim Gordon taking over the identity of Batman and all that entails. Batman/Superman deals with Clark Kent as he encounters Jim Gordon and what the hell is going on this week. All that and more tonight on the Not So New 52. Hello everyone and welcome to episode 197 of the Not So New 52. I am your host, and if you are watching the video version, you might notice something's just a wee bit different this week. Just a tiny, barely even noticeable thing. For the audio listeners, I won't beat around the bush. I shaved. I've done this show primarily with not a super heavy beard, but at least facial hair going on. Full disclosure, I wanted to grow it back out a little bit, but I just wanted to shave it all off once for the sake of just, start from scratch, make sure that I don't like it at a shorter length. I want it to grow out more, but I completely forgot that I had to film this. I was thinking, I got a few days before I got to be on camera again, and then I just forgot that this was on my schedule. So enjoy my stupid ass little baby face. It'll be gone by next week. Anyway, that has nothing to do with comics. You're here for comics. So this week is like all Bat books. I didn't realize it until I really started digging in. 75% of the books are just Bat related. So let's just work through this real quick. We have, in terms of Bat books, Batman, Catwoman, Detective Comics, Gotham Academy, Harley Quinn, Red Hood/Arsenal, and Batman/Superman. All of those Bat books. Then on top of that, we have Earth 2 Society, All-Star Section 8, New Suicide Squad, Starfire, and Constantine the Hellblazer. So out of that, new issue-wise, of course, Constantine the Hellblazer, Starfire, Earth 2 Society, Red Hood Arsenal, and then All-Star Section 8. And I'm going to put up a little warning, not actually on screen, but just imagine it's there. If you don't know what you're getting into with All-Star Section 8, and then I get to that section, I just want you to be aware. It is not for the normal comic reader. You may think, I listen to, you talk about Harley Quinn. I've heard you talk about some weird stuff like that. No. It's so far beyond that. It's such a different beast altogether. Please just be advised. I'm not going to say content warning, but, it's as close to a content warning as you can get. So anyway, all that's going on. I don't really have anything else to say on top of that. Last week went way too long, and I'm sure this week is also going to go way too long, but I don't have anything else to say, so we may as well just get into the comics and try to shorten this episode as much as possible. So I think I'll start with Batman. That makes the most sense to me. Batman number 41, written by Scott Snyder, art by Greg Capullo. So there was a sneak peek to this, but it was included in the Divergence one-shot, which we did back about a month ago. So just picking up on the issue 41 here, we open up with someone sitting in a park, looking at the sunset, and Jim Gordon is giving narration over... Or, sorry, it's not actually Jim Gordon. It is Jerry Powers who's saying, we're at a really weird point in history. We've got crazy colliders and stuff making new elements that only exist for a second, and it's the responsibility of the people making those to say, how are we going to use that? And so we open up with a big super meta thing where a giant, what seems to be electrical demon monster looking thing is destroying some buildings in Gotham. The cops are all surrounding, and they're like, hey, should we move in and attack? And one of the cops is like, nah, just give it room. It's like, what do you mean give it a room? It's up, we should be taking down the monster. It's like, no, not the monster, it. And then they look up in the sky, and there's a blimp that has a bat signal on it that points down to the ground like a spotlight. And it lands on the monster. And this is where we get the narration from Jim, basically saying, yeah, I know, it's weird, the bat signal shining down instead of up, but the whole city's been turned upside down, so why not this as well? And we see he's kind of just monologuing internally, and then he gets interrupted by his crew, which I guess are people who work for the Powers Company, and they're like, hey, are you good? You ready to go? You ready to drop in? He's like, yeah, totally. What's the situation? And we see working on the team is Julia Pennyworth. She is here, and she's like, well, something's going on. It's attacking a bank down at this area. We don't know what's going on with it, but you go ahead and drop in whenever. And so he's like, all right, bat thoughts. Got to think bat thoughts. And so he drops in, and he's like, yeah, no, this is crazy, but I have to think to myself, I'm not Jim Gordon anymore. I'm Batman. And so he comes in and attacks the electrical-looking demon thing. And so he's throwing punches, and he's like, yeah, you know, Gotham's got some cool stuff. We especially down here in the Little Cuba section, they've got the best baseball player in Gotham history. Dodger Valera lives here. So what is it that this guy wants with this crummy little bank in the area? And he ends up getting attacked by the monster, gets thrown across the room. And then we flash back to Jerry Powers is showing Jim Gordon all of the different trainees to become Batman. It's like, yep, they're all cops, and like, I'm sure you recognize them. And he's like, yeah, that guy's, you know, top of his class and all that. He's like, that one girl's tougher than you could ever hope to be, Jim. But here's the thing, none of them would be right as Batman, because they are all just kids. Like, they have so much to lose here. We want someone who is connected with this city, who knows it inside and out. And as much as the rest of the board wants a fresher-faced Batman, even though it's going to be a secret identity, I want you in there. And, you know, she gives on this whole spiel about, like, you know, he's just a man under there. He was never anything more than that. And Jim's like, I'm sorry. I really don't want to go on that. So back to the fight. We see that because he's made of energy, they're trying to launch an EMP, do what they can, but nothing's disrupting this guy. And at that point, Batman's like, wait a minute, how far is the range of the EMP? And it's like, oh, about half a mile. And he comes to the realization of like, oh, this is being controlled by someone who is outside of that half a mile range. And as he's coming to that realization, he gets a car thrown at him, which we get to see the full extent of the rookie suit, the robot exoskeleton that he uses. And he's like, oh, this thing isn't a monster. It's just a big trick. So then we go up to Gordon and Bullock up on the roof as they're having a smoke. And Bullock's just like, if you're going to be Batman, you can't smoke. And he's like, I don't even know if I'm going to do it. He's like, yeah, you're like 60. He's like, I am 46. Thank you very much. But as they're talking about this stuff, basically Bullock's just like, look, the department did its best stuff ever since the Joker attack, and you know, these cadets, I know you think that you're protecting them, but they are more than capable of anything that has the ability to be thrown at them in Gotham. And we see one of the cadets comes up onto the roof, and they're like, oh, hey, we didn't know that you smoked. And he's like, oh no, I'm FaceTiming with my almost 1-year-old son. Take a look at him. He's wearing a little bat suit. He's going to be just like daddy. And as he goes off to FaceTime with his son, immediately Bullock's just like, all right, you're going to have to quit smoking if you're going to be Batman. So we then see Batman is trying to face down this thing, trying to get a read on the city. He's using some form of X-ray vision included in the suit to see that the baseball player, the rich guy, Dodger Valero, is actually being held hostage because he keeps all of his money in that bank. And the guy who's controlling this thing has got like a VR headset, and he's doing it from inside of Dodger's apartment, apparently just to get into Dodger's vault, because with all of the crazy monster stuff going on, nobody would think that he was actually just robbing the place. So they get a read on the guy who was apparently a known gang member. Batman starts running over to get it, but then wouldn't you know it, he gets an entire semi-truck thrown at him, and all of Mission Control is unable to get a read on him anymore. So we cut back to Jim being introduced to the rookie suit, and we see the introduction of Julia and Daryl. Julia has gone under a fake name here, Julia Perry, and they say, oh, we hired her because she's got a lot of references with Wayne Enterprises for some reason. And Daryl seems to be the tech guy in charge of the suit. And he says, oh, do you not like the color? I can fix it. And we switch through like classic Batman with the blue and the gray, Zur-NR with the red and purples, and then Zero Year with the purple gloves and all that. And he's like, no, just leave it as it is. It's fine. But he's like, look, none of this is what Batman is, Jerry. And she's like, yeah, well, it's not. But if you want to be a part of it, you're going to have to try to accept that this is what Batman is now. So we see the guy who's, he's throwing the truck at Jim, and the baseball player is just like, hey, at least he's out there, he's doing the job. You're in here like you're nothing, you're not doing a thing. And he takes off the VR headset, and the guy's like, oh yeah, I was gonna let you live, but now I think I'm just gonna kill you anyway. And besides, that thing out there, it doesn't even look like Batman. And then all of a sudden a tiny little batarang comes in, hits him in the chest, and provides an electric shock that knocks him out. And we see outside of the bat suit now, outside the rookie suit, is Jim, and he's got like a form-fitting thing, but he's also got himself a taser gun. So that's his piece, I guess. So he goes in, and Dodger's like, hey, much obliged, Batman. And he's like, yeah, just got to get out and walk the beat. So he walks back out into the street, he gets back into his rookie suit, and he's like, this is a weird period. It's cops and Batman working together. We're just going to have to deal with it, but, this could be for a better Batman, a better tomorrow. And so he salutes to the other cops, and we see that Jerry has provided a on-site place where he's going to stay, a quote-unquote cave for him to spend his nights. And he sees a note that was left from Harvey in his trench coat jacket saying, I guess they'll have to start making these damn things, which I'm not sure what that means, I'll be honest, but maybe it'll come back. And he just looks out over the skyline of Gotham saying, oh man, what have I done? And then the final thing is we go back to that opening page with whoever it is looking out at the sunset in the park. Another man walks by, does a double take, and says, Bruce Wayne? Dun, dun, dun. Couldn't leave him dead for one issue. Not even one issue. Yeah. Okay, I'm not in love with the idea of Jim as Batman. Obviously, there's some downsides to that, but as far as the setup goes, I think this is done well. I am understanding why Jim is in the position he's in. I like his own bat suit, not the robot thing, but his independent bat suit. The robot thing's it's kind of just feels like an excuse more than anything else of how do we get this guy who has absolutely not been trained to be Batman to still be able to do Batman things? And the answer is put him in a mech. The rest of it, character-wise, nothing's really fleshed out yet, but I like Julia sticking around. There's some other stuff going on there that seems interesting. Whatever they're doing with Bruce Wayne, I'm sure we'll get to. It's not bad by any means. It's just very different and it's going to take some getting used to. So for this one, I think I'm going to give it I'll give it a 7.5. It's kind of still proving itself, but I'm hoping for the best. Earth 2 Society #1, written by David H. Wilson, art by Jorge Jiménez. So before we get into the issue proper, we've got a sneak peek, which is just some point in the near future. We open up with 1 year after planetfall, which is what they call the colonization of this planet. And we got Kara as Power Girl, who's trying to get someone to stop doing something. It's not implicitly made aware of what it is, but there is clearly something called the Genesis Machine, and Helena Wayne is behind it. As she is praying that this machine is not turned on, Alan's Green Lantern comes up and just sprouts from the planet. He is huge, and he's like, hey, relinquish the machine or perish. And we go into New Gotham, Wayne Corp headquarters, where Red Arrow, Oliver Queen, and Helena are activating the Genesis Machine, which, if you remember, at the end of the Earth 2 series, was a chronicle of all of the genetics from Earth, all of the animals and life forms of everything. So they're essentially going to terraform the entire living biome of this new planet they're on. And they think, yes, this is what Bruce Wayne died for. It's the only way. So we cut to outside New Gotham as we meet our new Batman, who is making his way into the city. It's Dick Grayson. He's like, hey, I'm inside. I'm closing in tight. I'm trying to get there before giant kaiju Alan Scott gets there. But it's almost sunrise, Kara. You've got to go away now. And we cut over to Kara and show that apparently this new Earth 2 orbits binary stars. One of them is yellow and the other one is red. So when the red sun comes up, she gets her power zapped. So she starts falling out of the sky. We see Flash shows up, presumably Jay Garrick, and saves her from being a splotch on the ground. And they watch as Alan starts marching his way towards New Gotham, saying that it is now forfeit. So Batman's the only one who could possibly stop this. Red Arrow sees Alan Scott coming in, and he's like, hey, Helena, you better push that button soon. And they say, hey, it's no big deal. Even if Green Lantern shows up, we have our backup plan. And Red Arrow says, yeah, are you really sure that this kid can protect us? And we see who I presume is Jimmy Olsen in an outfit saying, hey, I'm not some kid, I'm Dr. Impossible. And so activate the machine and let me take care of Green Lantern. And he sparks some energy from his body, and that's just the sneak peek. Has nothing to do with the rest of the issue. That's like several issues down the line as far as I could tell. So, picking up this one, still 1 year after Planetfall, we see Grayson is being shot at by a bunch of energy weapons or something. And he says, yeah, New Gotham was built around the first of the ships that crashed down onto the planet. All the twisted metal, we rebuilt it up from there. And he's talking to somebody over the comms saying, hey, I'm being pinned down. Where's the sniper? It's like, don't worry about that. Sniper's gone. You got to get to your target. And so we see Grayson as Batman is going through. He's trying to get to his target. However, he comes across a kid with a dog that is being attacked by some punks. And he's like, hold on, just give me a second. It's like, no, negative, stay on your target. And he's like, nah, I got to check out on this kid. Turns out the target is Terry Sloan, who is running for his life down these dark alleys when all of a sudden he gets attacked by someone in a mask. And we see there are several of them as he comes to, and he says, oh, you've ruled long enough from above. Down here, you'll see how things really work. My name is Johnny Sorrow, and it's time for you to face the truth. So we cut to 1 year prior, just after Convergence ends, and I cannot express to you how much they go out of their way to pretend or not specifically mention things that happened in Convergence. But Dick Grayson is lying paralyzed on the ground. He says, yeah, Green Lantern went up into the sky, Flash is running around the world, I'm still sitting here paralyzed, going in and out of consciousness. It's a whole thing. But then up above the planet, we get the recap of how he lost his wife and his kid, but his kid is theoretically on the ship, and 2 million survivors made it off the planet. So now that they're approaching this new Earth 2, which is an exact clone down to all of the same continents in the same places, and so all the ships are coming over the horizon, and everyone who's on board the ships are like, oh my god, we made it, we got a signal, this is insane, it's happening. And we cut to one of the ships called Overwatch 1, which has Sloan and all of his guys on it saying, all right, activate the descent override, we're going to monitor all the ships that they land at their designated sites, and the only government is Overwatch 1. We will now be in control from now on. 12 cities will be formed because there are 12 ships. So all the ships start coming down, and each of them are just like, oh, we have to brace for impact, brace for impact. These ships were not designed to land. They were designed for transport. And Terry says, yeah, well, most of them will live, and those who do will thank us someday. So as the ships start coming down hard, Grayson's looking up, and he's like, look, I don't know what higher entity there is. Clearly you've got it out for me, but please take it easy on the survivors. And we see as the ships are coming down, Green Lantern starts using full planet energy to more or less save them. As far as I can tell, it's still a giant fiery wreckage, but it seems like the people are more or less protected. So Huntress gets off and sees that Alan survived, and she's like, oh, you lived? And he's like, look, I'm now part of the planet. I don't really give a crap about any individual life. I'm more about protecting life as a whole. So I got to go take care of those other ships. Good luck with the rest of your survivors. And he just takes off. So at that point, Miss Terrific and Red Arrow hop off of their ships. They start trying to help survivors. nearby, Dick Grayson's crawling, trying to get back over to where the ship is. A tree starts to crash down on him, but Mr. Terrific comes in and says, like, hey, you're a survivor. You good? What you doing out here? And he's like, oh, I'm having a picnic. What does it look like? And he's like, oh, okay, you're funny. Cool, great. Anyway, I'm here to save your life. Cut back to modern day. We have Terry Sloan getting punched in the face, theoretically by Batman. And we see the rest of the Johnny Sorrow crew. Or, sorry, no, my mistake. We don't go over to Terry Sloan yet. He punches one of the punks in the face, makes sure that that kid is not his son, and he's like, oh, okay, never mind, I'm going off to deal with Terry now. So we see the Johnny Sorrow gang is reading from some sort of book or something like that, kind of just delivering these last rites to Terry. They've got candles around him and everything, and that's when Batman comes in and he starts trying to dispose of Johnny Sorrow's men. And he's like, hey, just walk away, Sorrow. And Sorrow starts to take off his mask, says, you want to see something really scary. Batman throws up his cape, which seemingly blocks whatever the cause of that would have been. But Terry starts taking off. He starts going down a side thing as Johnny Sorrow also makes his escape. So Batman chooses to go after Terry. He manages to get the drop on him. But Terry, he's got a full-on jetpack with big wings and stuff like that. And Batman starts saying, like, hey, you're being charged with crimes against society. You got to come with me. And immediately Terry's just like, what are you I'm the government, man. I literally am the guy who runs everything. And he's like, nope, you're a civilian and you're going to stand trial. And Terry says that Overwatch has been compromised. I am hunted now. Tell me the truth. Did he send you? And that's when Terry starts taking off into the sky. And Batman uses his grapple hook because he doesn't know who the hell Terry's talking about. But he grabs onto Terry's wing pack, gets slammed into a building, and loses his grapple hook. And he starts falling down to the ground. But the only thing he's thinking is, Terry Sloan has all of the control, all of the firepower on the entirety of the Earth. And someone has him scared out of his mind. And that's where we leave off with. There also was one little mention I didn't want to skip over, which is that they mentioned Val Zod is no longer operating. So the Superman of that planet is just not doing a thing at this moment. They don't get into specifics, but I guess that's happening. So, man, they just really don't want to deal with convergence. Like, I can understand the idea of skipping 1 year ahead. You don't want to go through all the logistics of, here's how you set up the planet, and here's us, like, trying to find resources and building things, and, like, how do we set up the laws of this planet? It's logistics. I understand you want to jump into the action and that sort of stuff. However, I hope we go back for that. Because skipping ahead to this point and just saying, don't worry about it, like, we just built society in the meantime, that's going to be really unsatisfying. Like, to just say that, I mean, I know we'll eventually get, how does Dick Grayson walk again? Like, the little things like that. But I kind of want to know, you took all of this time to show the destruction of Earth 2, you literally made a weekly series off of it, and now you're not going to show us how they got back on their feet? Like, that's kind of what I want out of this series. It's called Society. We live in a society, whatever. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and say this one is a 7, and at least half a point of that is specifically Jorge Jiménez's art. It's great, so no shade on that. But yeah, this series isn't quite what I wanted it to be, and it kind of feels like, all right, well, now you guys can just do whatever, because you don't even need to build up the convergence anymore. You're just over there, and we can forget about you. Detective Comics number 41, written by Francis Manapul and Brian Buccellato, art by Fernando Blanco. But first we have the sneak peek, which is just art by Francis Manapul. No Fernando Blanco on that. We pick up with Harvey talking to who's obviously Jim Gordon in the bat suit. It's kept in shadows, but like it absolutely is. And he says, look, things are complicated now. It always has been, but I'm asking you to trust me, to have my back here. And that's Bullock to Gordon. So we see a police van with the bat logo in the front of it. It's got Renee Montoya, Yips, who is Harvey's partner from the last arc of this book, and Harvey. And Montoya is driving. She's going crazy. She's driving at top speeds. We see as they're following behind this big ship up in the sky that is throwing out exhaust all over the highway. They can't see. They don't have a visual. They say, Montoya, you got to slow down. We need to see what's going on. Montoya tells him to shut up when all of a sudden something happens. A giant fist appears in the road and just stops the car in the middle, and it starts flipping over. It gets onto its side. And as it's about to like fall off the edge, we see Gordon comes in the bat suit, in the robot suit, and grabs hold of it and stops it from going off. So once he's got the van, he's not able to save them independently, but he gets it to safety and he takes back off to go against whatever it is he's fighting against. And as Bullock comes to his senses, he's like, hey, yep, Nancy, I'm here, but she's out cold. So him and Montoya get out of the car and they say, hey, Nancy's stuck, still breathing inside. And Montoya says, we have to do this now. We may not get another chance. And as Yip starts coming to, Montoya pulls out her gun, heads back to the car. Bullock stops her and says, no, it's too late for that. And then all of a sudden we get a giant fireball that implies they lit up the car to explode with Yip still inside. And Montoya says, what did we just do? And Bullock says, there's no going back after this. And we cut back to Bullock talking to Jim, basically saying, look, I know this is a lot to ask for, but this is different. She could bring down the department. I need you to help me kill my partner. On to the main story. So we pick up 30 minutes ago with Gordon is out beating up some criminals in the middle of the street. And it's in shadow, so it's not immediately apparent what's going on, but Bullock is getting hot and heavy with Yips. They are apparently now romantically entwined. So as Gordon is fighting against this guy out in the street, we see that he's some member of some gang or cult or whatever else like that, and he's doing his best to fight against him as best he can, when all of a sudden, as they're in the middle of fighting, one of the guys puts a sticky grenade or something on Batman's suit and starts running off. Batman can't get it off of the robot suit, and so it explodes, which causes Harvey and Yips to stop what they're doing, look out, see the explosion through their window, and say, crap, that's definitely got to be Batman. Ruining my night. The more things change. So we cut to 3 weeks prior, and we see Maggie Sawyer is now commissioner. She's basically telling Bullock, look, we gave you time off after everything that happened with your partner and all that, and the last thing, but you've run out of it. You need to come back on the force. And Bullock specifically is asking that he be given time to go find where Batman is. And she's like, he's dead. Everyone in the city has accepted that he's dead. Why can't you? And he's like, oh yeah, it's because everyone in the city just knows Batman that well. And they're like, it doesn't matter. The mayor thinks so. The taxpayers do. You are not given the special assignment to go find a dead man. And he's like, no, look, I'm not going to accept that, but if you got to put me back in the rotation, then put me back in the rotation. Fine. I'll go back to my job. And he looks over and sees an ashtray, and he asks when Jim is coming back, and she's like, I don't know if he's going to. So we got to 2 weeks ago. Jim is talking to Maggie at the equivalent of Cirque du Soleil, and they're saying now they're setting up all this stuff for the big show. It's going to be who's who of Gotham showing up there, and so security has to be really, really good. And Jim's like, oh yeah, you're gonna be fine. I'm sure you'll be able to get it all set up there. And she basically mentions, hey, look, I'm having trouble getting Bullock back into the groove of things. It's a thing. Have you decided whether or not you're going to be Batman? And he's like, I mean, not really, no, but if someone needs to talk to Bullock, I'm happy to go do so. I can try to get him back into what's going on there. So she says, look, they don't want you talking about you possibly being Batman, so maybe don't tell him. And she's like, no, that's stupid. I trust him. And yeah, I'm gonna tell him everything about what's going on. And she's like, yeah, well, also his partner is under suspension right now, so maybe do him a favor and don't tell him anything. So we cut to 1 week ago. Bullock's in a bar with Yips. She's on suspension ever since she shot that kid. And as they're hanging out in a cop bar, Bullock gets drunk, sees that there are some bikers hanging out in here, gets very offended by the fact that they are in a cop bar, and as he loudly yells out that fact, they come over trying to start something. A couple other cops get in the way, and wouldn't you know it, a brawl just completely breaks out. So Yips gets in on the action, hoping that she can save a guy who's basically on the recommendation board, and a biker sneaks up behind Bullock, is about to smash a bottle on his head, when in comes Montoya, who has apparently been missing from the force for quite some time. She's been busy over in Bloodhaven, punches a biker in the face, and she's like, hey, first one to get their ass knocked down has to buy tacos. So we cut to Bullock buying tacos from a taco truck. And they basically say, yeah, Montoya, you've been gone for so long, but you're back here now. What's going on? And she's like, yeah, I want to know why you turned down the Batman task force. And Yips is like, I'm sorry, you were offered the Batman task force? What's going on here? And he's like, nah, screw that. I'm not working for this fake Batman, whoever he's going to be. So Yips has to go back. Like, she's like, yeah, it's past my bedtime. I need to get home. And Montoya's like, hold on, Bullock, let's just stay here for a minute, and I'll let you go with her. So he's basically like, look, I'm happy you're back, whatever, but I'm not interested in putting my life on the line for whoever that guy's going to be, some mystery Yahoo. And it's like, yeah, well, I know you had a thing against the original Batman, but that's not what this is anymore. So more or less what they go back and forth and say is Montoya's like, look, I can get Yips reinstated. If I can tell you who's inside the mask and you join us, I can get her reinstated. And he's like, no, you don't have that kind of pull. So we cut back to the main part of the timeline. The Batman task force is on their way down. Yips is on the team, along with Bullock and Montoya. And as they arrive at where the explosion is, they're like, there's so much rubble here. Was this Batman? Is he exploded? Is he dead now? This is where the tracker is. And they say, oh, wait, no, there he is. And they look up in the sky as he comes down with full force, just punching one of these gang members out. So up on top of a nearby rooftop, we see the other gang members were there. They start taking shots at the Batman and all the police officers. Bullock rushes up to the top of the building just in time to see Batman climbing up to the top and getting hit with a rocket launcher straight into a building across the street. And he's yelling out no, because he knows who's inside of it by now. But we cut back to a week ago, and we see Montoya saying, yeah, I can get Yips reinstated, and I have friends in high places. And she says, Jim Gordon. And he's like, don't mess with me. What do you know, Montoya? And he's like, I only know that he's considering it and that he wants you in. And despite all of this, in the middle of it, we see Yips is taking a phone call saying that she's running security for that Cirque du Soleil event. And she's saying how she'll have the seating chart soon, and a person on the other end of the phone says, good, kill them all. And the final panel is Harvey saying, fine, I'll babysit the Bat robot, but you're going to help me find the real Batman, wherever he may be. Okay. So my critique on this book has always been that it felt like it introduced too many big concepts, too many new characters without getting us reacquainted with these new characters. Like, we just throw out 15 new characters and say, get to know them as we explore them here. And I still see that here, but the benefit that it has working for it right now is that everything is in flux. We have a new Batman. We have a new team. We have all this stuff going on. So the fact that we are introducing this idea that Yips may be fully corrupt, and now we have Montoya back, and what was her story? Where's she been? I think it works better for the book, because now it's just about understanding the different angles of what does it mean with Jim Gordon as Batman. So I like this aspect of approaching it from the cop side. The sneak peek has me definitely intrigued of whether or not they're just going to straight up kill the partner. So yeah, it's a lot of interesting stuff. Looking forward to seeing how it delves out. Art also looks great. So I think overall I'm going to hit this one with a solid 8. I think it gets up there, and I'm interested to see what more we got coming. New Suicide Squad number 9, written by Sean Ryan, art by Philippe Briones. So first we've got a sneak peek from last month's Convergence issues where we get random government employee coming into his boss's office. Her name is Miss Pesta. And he's like, hey, just want to have a word with you. I'm getting a little bit concerned about Task Force X. And she's like, oh, yeah, no, that last arc in China was totally crazy. What have they been up to recently? And he's like, I mean, not much. And we cut to Eastern Ukraine as a giant Russian red robot is marching down the street, about to kill Black Manta, Harley, and Captain Boomerang, or Rocket Red, that's what it's called. He's firing off laser beams or whatever. So they're talking to Waller saying, hey, our mission was to find it. We found it. Can we go now? And she's like, could you please destroy it? That's now your mission. We're doing that now. And Manta's like, no, it's already pretty beaten up. Just let us get out of here. Like, we're not equipped to deal with that. But then Boomerang hawks over the comm and says like, don't worry, we'll do it. So Harley then busts out of their hiding spot, moves into the middle of the street, just pulls out some finger guns, and is almost immediately killed. So Manta has to push her out of the way, and she's like, oh, sorry, I was putting the gun the wrong way, and she holds it up to her own head. Then all of a sudden, Captain Boomerang comes in a tank and says, check out what I found. And so the Rocket Red tries to blow him up. He misses a few shots, which allows Captain Boomerang just enough time to fire off a big shot, smack dab to the center of the chest, gets a few more follow-up shots, and the Rocket Red is down. So immediately Boomerang's just like, yeah, you know, I'm more than just a one-trick pony. And they say, all right, well, let's get back to base. He's upset that he has to leave the tank behind. And then we cut back to the government employees who were like, yeah, they're a little bit too unpredictable. I don't think even like the upper brass knows what to do with this group anymore. So the Miss Pesta says, all right, so we should be accelerating our program. And he says, yep. So she says, all right, let's start ending this thing. And that is the sneak peek. So the main issue, we open up with Deadshot out in the middle of whatever war-torn field he's on. He gets a cigarette lit up by someone else who's there with him. I don't think we know who this is. And he's just like, yeah, you know, it's been a stressful couple of days out here, but, you know, out here underneath the stars and all that, it's actually kind of nice. And again, it's completely war-torn. There's tons of upended bodies and stuff like that. But we cut to 4 weeks earlier as Deadshot finally gets a call. He gets a knock on his window saying, hey, it's briefing time. And he's super pumped. And the guard's like, why are you so excited? He's like, I'm bored out of my mind. Let's go. And as soon as he gets in the room, he sees Captain Boomerang. And he's like, never mind. Please put me back. So he sits down and they, you know, there's banter going on between Boomerang and Deadshot, specifically aimed at Waller sometimes as well. Vic Sage is still there. And he actually seems to be pretty cool with Waller now. Like, he's willing to be second in command as Waller's trying to talk. They're bantering. He's just like, hey, you guys, like, chill out. She's trying to talk right now. So we see she explains that there's the League of Assassins, well known. They operate in the shadows. Turns out there is a splinter cell that is formed who prefers to act more in public. They call themselves the League, and they have gotten their hands on some crazy-ass supervillain weapons, and it is now the task force's job to get in there, find out what kind of weaponry they have, and kill as many of them as they can on the way out. So at that point, we see that they are like, okay, fair enough, but it's just 3 of us. Like, how many are we honestly expected to kill here? It's like, well, it's not just going to be you 3. Once you're out, you're also going to have backup. We got Harley, we got Reverse Flash, and Parasite. And they're like, wait a minute, Parasite's never been on the team. Who the hell's Parasite? And Deadshot says he's kind of like if Grimace had sex with a nightmare, to which Boomerang doesn't know who Grimace is, but fair enough. And they say, look, the only way you're going to get in deep enough to see what kind of weapons they have is if you actually believe in their code. You have to study it, you have to know it, because they're going to have to induct you in and you need to answer correctly. So study up. And they're like, wait a minute, hold on, this has a homework assignment? What the hell? So we cut to some time later over in Turkey. A young guy welcomes them. Apparently his original name was Tomorrow Thief, but now he's just Soldier. He's given up his identity to join into this group until he is properly trained. And he sings their praises. He's like, yeah, you know, I needed to change. These guys, they have a real idea as to what they want to do with the world. They believe in something. Like, when's the last time you ever met someone who believed in something? It's crazy. So they go to a town that apparently has been completely taken over by the League, and by taken over, it's quote-unquote purified, where pretty much everyone is dead. You see bodies littering the streets, and it's like, yeah, it was a harsh battle, but we ended up winning in the end. So at that point, they get out of the truck, and Tomorrow Thief, for lack of a better name, says, all right, you guys go inside. They want to meet the American villains themselves, the criminals, so they'll greet you and they'll start your initiation. So they all sit down inside of this lobby, and then immediately are black bagged, put into torture chambers, and start getting the absolute crap beat out of them as they are given different questions. And they say, who are you? What do you want? All this stuff. And the answer, I believe in what you're doing. My name is George Harkness, which I swear his name was always something else. Is this a different Captain Boomerang? But yeah, they ask them questions about their belief system, about their structure, and all the while they're being beaten up. Like, there's one point Captain Boomerang has a drill into his shoulder. Black Manta has a hot iron on his back, and they answer the questions correctly. They say, like, oh, the fang that protects the head is what Earth needs to survive, and all that sort of stuff. So in the end, they say, and who must be slaughtered? And they all answer the corrupted. And they say, all right, well, will you join us in slaughtering the corrupted? And they all say yes. So they're dumped back off in a room as they recover. They wonder whether or not they passed. And then guy comes in and says, all right, 3 of you, come on, let's go. And they're all loaded up into a new truck. They're brought out deep into the desert. And as the black masks are taken off their head, we see 3 superheroes, all in costume, have been frozen solid with some of, I guess, Mr. Freeze's ice guns. And they say, we froze these guys. They tried to be heroes. They thought they could stop us. And now you're going to prove your loyalty. So go for it. And they hand them all baseball bats. And Black Manta's like, all right. And he just bashes one of them. Top half is completely shattered. Boomerang and Deadshot join in afterwards, immediately taken off the tops of the other 2 heroes, and they are congratulated. They say, very good. They're ushered back to the car, and that's it. That's where the issue ends. I will say the ending left a little bit to be desired. Maybe, like, the trade doesn't have the next time, sort of like, and next issue that it does, like the little teaser line. Maybe it would have ended a little bit better with that, but still, it was a very sudden ending. I mean, the sneak peek's basically useless. It's just kind of like, hey, here's how kooky crazy the book's going to be. For the issue itself, I like the premise, but I've liked the premise on some of these other ones as well, and it's always kind of felt mediocre by the end. So I'm hoping that we can get something new out of this, get a little bit crazier with it. Yeah, I think this one's probably just going to be a 7 for me. It's fine. It's got some funny moments to it. And I do like the pacing of, like, the interrogation induction ceremony, but all in all, it still just feels like it was the same book that we had before we took the break for Convergence, and it hasn't really changed much at all in that degree. So yeah, 7. Batman Superman number 21, written by Greg Pak, art by Ardian Syaf. So we've got the sneak peek first, which I believe is the same team, and we've got somewhere in Wayne Tower, Gotham City, as they're described later as space barbarians, are attacking this city, and they're like, wait a minute, hold on, you hear that? It's Superman. He must have tracked us from Metropolis. And one of the guys is like, who cares? He doesn't have his powers anymore. He's just a dude. And then in comes Superman on a motorcycle, crashing through the main window and just running this dude over. He is big enough to take it, but the Superman goes through, starts like taking all their weapons, whatnot. They start throwing around smoke grenades, to which Superman, he's coughing like crazy, but he's like, tell me, how many more of you are there? And I was like, none, it's just us. And he's like, don't lie to me. And then all of a sudden, something comes in, goes to grab Superman, says, who the hell are you? And Superman says, who the hell are you? And it turns out it's Batman. Big robot, Jim Gordon in the Batsuit, Batman. I'm not sure if we're supposed to know it's Jim Gordon in the context of this book, but like it clearly is, so whatever. He gets punched, he punches Superman, and then Superman's like, all right, hell with that. And so he immediately calls like, you moving different, you sound different, you're hiding your face. What happened to my friend? And Jim uses a taser on Superman, and he's like, all right, well, I'm not strong enough to deal with this right now. I gotta go. Superman shouldn't be running, but I am. And so he hops on his motorcycle and drives off. We then see Jim is just tanking him down, just chasing him down the street. Superman grabs hold of a lamppost to make like a sharp 90-degree turn, or 180, I should say, and runs his motorcycle straight into the Batbot. But Jim fires off some missiles to blow it up before it makes collisions. So Clark's trying to get on his feet, doing what he can. He's just got completely disoriented, and as the Batbot is approaching, a hand outstretches and says, hey, you're obviously outclassed. They're going to be put away for years because you just broke a bunch of Gotham's laws. You're going to have to say that you're working with me, Lex Luthor. And in comes Lex wearing like the dumbest shades I've ever seen in my life. So that's the sneak peek. We then go into the main issue where we go back to Metropolis, fighting against some of these space barbarians where they're trying to kill Kent just because he is Superman. That's what he's doing now. And so he's throwing punches, he's doing what he can as they're yelling like, kill the alien, and he just fights like hell. He's kicking people in crotches. He's not fighting quote unquote honorably, but he's just like, hey, my dad always said don't punch down, but I swear to God these guys are bigger than me. So he feels like his leg's on fire, like he got stabbed. He looks down, it was stabbed, and he's like, oh, all right, fair enough. So he pulls it out, and he looks over and sees a cop who's kind of just standing there. And the cop's just like, hey, might want to move along, Mr. Kent. And he's like, hey, I know you. You stood up against your sergeant, but like, where were you just now? I really could have used some help. And he's like, we get some memos from up top. Nobody knows who's really sending them, but they say Superman is attracting these guys. He's attracting these people to try to attack him. So whenever one of these fights breaks out, we're supposed to let you just deal with it. And he's like, yeah, memos from up top. Oh, there's only one person that can be. So he immediately makes his way into town. He's blocked by a whole bunch of security guards. And he's just like, look, I'm going up there one way or another. And we see some instructions are past the security guards. They all part to let him in. And it turns out it's Lex Luthor. Of course it is. And he's just like, Clark, I don't buy it. I look, you don't have your powers, so like you can't fly, you don't have heat vision, all that stuff right now. You still have a little bit of strength, but like, what are the odds that Clark Kent is Superman at the same time where Superman loses his powers? And like, the more I look at it, the less it makes sense. Like, just look at you, you're bleeding. Like, that's what's your game? Where's Superman actually gone? And Superman's like, I don't have time for all this. I'm not playing your game. What are you doing? I know you're behind all this. You somehow set the wheels in motion to get my identity leaked, right? And he's like, come on, I've got better things to do than that. And Superman just slams his fist like through the desk. And Lex is like, I still don't buy it, but fine, fair enough. Look, the thugs that have been attacking you, they've been using weapons with an energy signature that traces back to Gotham City. So if you want to find out what's going on, you got to go that way. And Clark's just like, I shouldn't trust him, whatever, but if it's going to Gotham, then I can at least go and talk to Bruce and he'll help me figure this out. Cue the sneak peek. He gets punched out by Batman, and Lex Luthor intervenes, and he says, whoa, Mr. Big Batman, sir. Clark Kent's working for me. And he's like, yeah, really? Then why did he just disappear? And Lex like, oh, hey, look at that. He pulled a U. Well, not a U, but the old U. You know what I mean. So immediately Batbot's like, hey, he was breaking into Wayne Tower. And Lex goes over and talks to the cops saying, hey, was he breaking in or was he doing something else? It's like, no, the space barbarians broke in. He was saving us. He did that. And then Batman attacked and they got away. And Batman's just like, all right, well, I'm not picking up anything strange here. And Lex is like, of course not. Superman took the evidence. So we see Clark on a bus heading to, or I guess on the outskirts of Gotham, and he's got whatever part of this weapon, this energy signature is, tucked away in his coat, and he's like, well, I've tried calling you on the phone, Bruce. You're not picking up. I guess I'm going to have to come see you in person. I don't know who I can trust, but I know I can trust you at the very least. And he looks over and sees a kid who's got action figures of Batman and Superman and are making them fight each other. So he hops off the bus, starts walking over to where the Batcave entrance is, because he still remembers where it is. And he's like, you're Batman. You always have a plan. Even if your manor is now currently called Arkham Manor, like, you've still got something going on. So he goes in, he starts calling for Bruce, and then in comes Alfred, who's conspicuously hiding his right hand the entire time, but they never outright say it. And immediately Alfred's just like, oh, Master Clark, you need something done. I see you need this thing scanned. So I can go ahead and do that. I can analyze this. And Superman's like, I can't hear his heartbeat, and I can't like look into his bloodstream to see how much like epinephrine he's got going on, but I can tell something's wrong with Alfred. And Alfred just cracks, and he's just like, look, you may as well have been his best friend. I don't know anybody who's really closer with him than you. I always knew he was going to die before me. Do you understand how difficult that is for me to deal with? To like raise this child and just know that he's going to die before me. But please, for the love of God, just let him rest. He lived in this world of darkness so that you would be able to live in a world of light. For his sake and for yours, just let him be. And Superman is like processing. He's trying to deal with this right now, but he just can't shake the feeling that before Alfred was a butler, he was an actor. And so he's like, no, there's no way. Bruce can't actually be dead. Like, I don't have the powers to listen for your heartbeat or anything like that. I don't even know if I recognize you on the street right now, but you're always there. So he realizes he has to make a call, and he calls to Lois. And Lois picks up the line. She's like, hey, how are you? What's going on? And he's like, yeah, I'm good. And there's just silence awkwardly. And she's like, did you call for a reason? And he's like, yeah, I'm in Gotham right now. And she's like, oh, yeah, no, I saw it on the news, all that. You were fighting with Batman. Are you in trouble? And he's like, yeah, I'm in trouble because you leaked my identity, Lois. And she's like, look, I will admit, maybe not my best call, but I did what I had to do in the moment. You know why I did it. Also, here's all this other crazy stuff that's going on. Perry White might get fired. He's been in front of all these congressional testimonies and whatnot. Diana knows your secret identity and all that. Like, it's also, I'm getting death threats day after day. Jimmy's out of a job. Don't worry about the death threats, though. Metallo's keeping track of that sort of stuff. But yeah, that's like, if you want to talk about something, ignore all that. I'm still Lois. You're still Clark. What do you want? And he just goes silent again. And he's like, well, you're always good at keeping secrets. Bye, Clark. And she just hangs up. And Clark is immediately like, you know what? Fine. You're right. Alfred's right, too. All of them's right. I'm not built to live this way. I have to be Superman. I got to live in the sun. So he gets his motorcycle, he hijacks / takes one of the bat cycles because Alfred said, you're welcome to anything you want in the cave. He's not going to need it. And he gets some spray paints it red and blue, takes it out for a stroll, and he's like, all right, I'm ready. Goodbye, Bruce, wherever you may be. Hello, Batman. As we see, he blows up a car with one of the missiles on the bike, just enough to get the attention of Batbot again. So, yeah, it's stuff. So, I mean, the last book of this series was absolutely an annual. If I'm remembering correctly, it was an annual where Clark was left for dead on an island because of the inner machinations of Zadu. What the hell happened to that? That's just gone. We're just not even doing that anymore. That's completely just, oh, never mind. I don't feel like Greg Pak was specifically told, here's what the status quo is going to be in about 3 months, so be careful what you write. Yeah, no, this book definitely does feel like it got the short end in terms of, it's kind of the same thing of what happened to Batman and Robin when Damian died, where it just kind of had to scramble for a little while and do other things. And I feel like that one handled it with a bit of grace. This one, so far, I'm not as impressed. It just kind of feels like we're doing another Superman book. Now, maybe if we get a bit more on Jim Gordon's Batman, I could make the argument that it is a Batman Superman book, but this one has consistently kind of just felt like more of a Superman light rather than Batman / Superman. So, yeah, I'm not saying that it's a bad issue. I just don't feel like it's kind of in the same vein of what this book has been. And so I'm adjusting. I'm learning what this book wants to be now, and we'll see how that turns out. But as it stands, 6.5. It's 6.5 or 7, but I'm going to go with the 6.5. It's okay. It's just not doing anything that's standing out from all of the other Superman / Bat books that are going on right now. They're all kind of doing the same thing. I'd like this to have its own voice. Constantine, the Hellblazer, #1, written by Ming Doyle and James Tynion IV, art by Riley Rossmo. But first we've got the sneak peek where we go to New York City in some sort of dive bar club thing going on. There's a woman trying to pay her tab, and she's looking at this shiny little trinket she's got around her neck, and she thinks she sees someone out of the corner of her eye. We all see it's John Constantine, until finally he pops up right behind her and just like, oh, hey, well, why don't we talk for a little bit? We haven't got a chance to know each other. And she's like, oh my God, who the hell are you? And she's like, sorry, I was just trying to talk to you and I didn't mean to freak you out. How much of an ass am I that I'm willing to scare a girl like that? And she's like, oh, it's not just you. It's been a weird few days, but I think I'm over the worst of it now. And he's like, oh, well, let me buy you a drink. You can tell me all about that. And she's like, does that line usually work? And he's like, I mean, occasionally. And he explains, I've had a few days, weird ones throughout my life as well. Maybe I can be of some sort of help. And she's like, no, I don't think it's anything like this. And he's like, trust me, it might be something like this. So she explains that she is a stylist for musicians, gets them cool outfits, stuff like that, some cool setups, and he's like, all right, so what did you do? What made it so weird? And she's like, nothing. And then we see how she managed to summon a bunch of demons and then skinned them for their pelts in order to turn that into a really cool, quote-unquote, leather jacket. And she's like, yeah, it was badass. It looked amazing, but the price was a bit steeper than you would expect. And we see that her name is written in blood on the walls. And she's like, yeah, that's, I'm kind of trying to get away from that right now, but I had this one client who said that she knew a way to keep them from finding me. And she pulls the trinket out and she says, it's this guitar pick. She says it used to come from a guy who also got into situations like this. And he always managed to find a way to shirk responsibility. He always got out of it. And we see the guitar pick has written the initials JC on them. And Constantine's looking at it, and he's like rolling it over in his fingers, and he's like, oh, okay, so this thing keeps you safe. And it's like, yeah, at least that's what it's supposed to, and it seems like it's working as long as I'm wearing it. And as Constantine's rolling it in his fingers, he's like, well, Katie, you're not wearing it. And she's like, what? Wait a minute, hold on, how do you know my name? And we see Constantine be like, I know a lot about you, Katie. I know how many dead bodies have been in your wake as you've been running from this thing, how many people had to die to make that work. And, you said you were willing to pay the bartender. I think he's willing to collect. And we cut back over to the bartender who's got this horrific smile with these sharp fangs and his eyes are red. And he's like, hey, Katie, I was hoping we'd be able to meet up. And Katie's like, I thought you said you wanted to help me. And he's like, nope, I lied. So all these demons start grabbing hold of Katie. They start tearing apart. And she's like, what kind of person are you? And he's like, I'm not a goddamn superhero, that's for sure. So they start going after Katie as Constantine walks off, and they're just basically saying, give us your skin, give us your skin. So as Constantine walks off, he hears the Katie screaming and them chanting for skin in the bottom, and he looks back at a poster on the wall, and it's for Mucous Membrane, which is his old band in the comics, and even says featuring John Constantine and Veronica Delacroix. And he says, right back at you, kid, as he walks off. So that's the sneak peek. Not really tied into the story, just kind of the gist of Constantine is over being a hero. That was nice for a while. We're not doing it anymore. He's back to being a prick. So we open up the actual issue with Constantine walking into a clothing store naked but completely covered in blood and telling the person behind the counter, it's not what it looks like. And she says she's going to call the cops, so he immediately lays down some sort of spell to put her in a trance. And he's just like, look, I get it. Guy comes in covered in blood and a little bit of goop on his soldier, which is not human brains, mind you. But yeah, you want to call it in because it's scary, You like to understand that the sun casts a shadow, and that if it's so bright out there that you don't want to see what lives in the dark. And he goes through this whole thing, and she's just in this trance, and finally she snaps, and she's just like, oh, hey there, how can I help you? And he's like, he just holds up a piece of paper that says credit card, and he's just like, see this fancy credit card? We're going to go shopping. So he gets some clothes. Meanwhile, we see the ghost of Gaz, who's one of his old compatriots, who died because he's an ass, calling him an ass. And he's just like, yeah, I've heard it all before. It's whatever. And the ghost is chewing him out, saying, like, this girl's going to get fired. She's going to have to give up her life here, move back to her podunk town that she grew up in, all because you showed up naked in her shop one day. She didn't do anything wrong. She's going to have her life torn apart because of it. It's just how it is with people who come across you. And Constantine's like, yep. So he ends up walking down the street. He's dressed in his normal garb. He pickpockets this guy for some cigarettes and a wallet. And as he's walking down the street, he suddenly gets joined by more and more ghosts. And he's like, yeah, these are all the ghosts of the people I've completely screwed over in my life. Usually they don't all show up like this at once, though. They try to hold off for when I'm really down in the dumps. But, you know, sometimes they do show up. And he's like, all right, all of you just sawed off. I'm done with you. So most of them disappear, but Gaz is still following. And he's like, what, Gaz? It wasn't a suggestion. Get out of here. And Gaz says, hey, I need to talk to you about Frank. Frank being one of the other ghosts. And he's like, look, I don't care about your problems with Frank. If you've got a problem, just stay on the other side of the playground, but stop bothering me. So Gaz disappears as Constantine reaches into the wallet, pulls out some cash. He goes to a curry and chips place, wants to order a special. He sees the ghost walking outside, and he tells them all, basically, piss off. And he starts talking to the guy behind the bar, and basically just starts flirting with him. And the guy says, hey, you're yelling at nothing outside, because obviously he can't see the ghost, but he's like, how about a drink on the house? I'm actually the owner of the place, so I guess you could say drinks are on me. And Constantine's like, do tell, tall, dark, and handsome. So they flirt for a little bit until he basically says, well, this might be a bit forward, but you do anything tonight. And in steps this strange, slender-looking woman in the doorway. Constantine recognizes her as Blythe, who is a demon who is actually on the up and up, has gotten out of hell, but is like not possessing people, is actually like completely upstanding. And she comes over and starts hitting on Constantine, just saying like, oh, hey, well, Constantine, you want to come on? I got something I need to show you. Cut to, they're having sex in some sort of club somewhere, pretty openly and in public. Some guy walks in and Constantine's like, hey, piss off, this isn't a show. So they finish up and Constantine puts back on his pants and he's like, all right, so what do you want? She's like, what? Maybe it was just because I missed you. Okay, fine, I didn't miss you. I have a little bit of a pest problem at my club and I need you to come take care of it. It's imp infestation. So we get a breakdown of this club, which it turns out is structured off of Dante's Inferno. It's got 9 layers, it's all this sin, and she explains that it's also a soul collecting place. You basically sign your soul away as soon as you walk in. And there's a little bit of banter back and forth where Blythe is trying to get the context of the person that Constantine was previously romantically involved with, Veronica, and he's not opening up about that. But they get down to the bottom layer, and Constantine's like, all right, so where's this imp problem? Let's get that taken care of. So we enter into the back room of this place, and we come across this guy, Haluk, who is actually the business partner. He's the one who has set up the soul collection on this place, because if Blythe does it, it basically violates the terms of parole and will send her back to hell. So Haruk is the one who set up this place, and Blythe wants to double cross him. So she's brought in Constantine to basically send this guy back to hell on her behalf. And Constantine's like, this is a soap opera. I don't want any part of it. I want to bail. But Haruk is just like, oh, Blythe, you double crosser. How dare you? Blah, blah, blah. So they start arguing. Haruk grows into like a giant monstrous form and starts attacking Constantine. He manages to cast some spells, throw some holy water, stuff like that, gets Haruk down on the ground and starts casting the incantation. But he seems nervous for some reason, and he's not able to remember the final line of the incantation. So Blythe's like, what are you doing? Why aren't you getting rid of him? He's going to keep on attacking. And he's like, hey, I'm sorry, it's performance anxiety. So Blythe jumps in, finishes the spell, casts Haruk back down into hell. And Blythe's like, all right, well, you know, you didn't quite finish it off there, but you cast a spell. That's what's important. And Constantine's like, double check what you're saying there. You're the one who cast the spell, which I believe is also terms for breaking your parole. So you're going back to hell as well. And Blythe is like, what the hell, man? I thought that we were cool. I thought that, you know, we liked each other. And he's like, nah, you just tried to use me. And I just did the same thing back to you. So Blythe starts yelling like, oh, it's going to be 100 years until I'm out of hell again, but when I get out, I'm going to find you and I'm going to take you out. And, you know, makes all the comments about how Constantine is just the epitome of loneliness, how everyone who ever gets close to him is just absolutely ruined and nobody can ever get close to Constantine. And Constantine just kind of like kicks Blythe down in the hole a little bit, just being like, yeah, well, it's not the only trick I got up my sleeve. So the final shot we get are the ghosts surrounding Constantine again. And he's like, all right, come on, let's go back upstairs. We'll get a drink. But Gaz is like, hey, no, we need to talk about Frank. And it's like, yeah, what about Frank? I saw him earlier today when all of you came out. And he says, no, Frank's gone. Frank is dead. Somebody killed Frank and is killing all the rest of your ghosts, and it's all your fault. So that seems to be the conceit of the series, is someone is going through Constantine's literal skeletons in his closet and destroying them to some extent. So curious what that's going to mean. I really do like the art style on this. Beginning it feels weird, but as you continue, it gets more and more in line. I don't know how better to describe that. It's just kind of something where it's so stylistically different than pretty much anything else DC is doing. It just really works. So kudos on that. Writing wise, I like Constantine being this much of a jerk. Like, instead of a jerk with a heart of gold, he is just a jerk. It's good to have a kind of character like that, and I think it's more in line with what Constantine originally was. So yeah, I'm down with it. I like it. I'm looking forward to seeing where it goes. I always enjoyed Tynion's writing, so yeah, we'll go with a I'm gonna say an 8 with heavy room for improvement, because I think this series honestly might build to something cool. So 8 for now, but really enjoying it. Gotham Academy number 7, written by Becky, Cloonan, and Brendan Fletcher, art by Mingjue, Helen, Chen. Apologies if I butchered that. However, first and foremost, we have a sneak peek that was included in a Convergence issue. Honestly, not a lot to say. It is essentially just kind of the thesis statement for the series, written from the perspective of Maps in rhyming couplets. And it's kind of just going over each of the characters, what they do, what they contribute to the group, and the general dynamic of they are here to protect Gotham Academy because there's weird stuff going on. And it's told from the perspective of Maps doing an assignment, I guess, about what she has learned at Gotham Academy so far. And she's like, well, I had to talk about that. And she's presenting it to Olive, and Olive's just like, half this stuff hasn't happened. And she's like, not yet, wink. So the actual issue proper, we open up with, I presume, the English teacher who is going over Edgar Allan Poe's The Raven. Meanwhile, Maps is using a feather quill that she apparently stole from the headmaster's office back during the last Avengers, saying like, oh, who else should I add to my knockoff Dungeons and Dragons games called Serpents and Spells? There's this guy in front of me who I have this crush on, Eric. He's a weirdo, but he's got skills. And she's just staring at the back of hhis head and like writing down all the different roles he could fill in the group. And she's not paying attention to lessons, so the teacher comes up, slams a book down. And as she's basically like, oh, I'm sorry, I was just thinking about the book so much. And he's like, yeah, it seems like your head's in the clouds. And as she's getting more and more uncomfortable with all this happening, Eric all of a sudden stands up and seems to be like ready to attack the teacher. And then all of a sudden he gets tackled to the ground by the mysterious new kid in the back, who, if you remember the last issue of this book, was Damian Wayne. And so Damian tackles this kid down, and he turns to the teacher and just like, hey, these children are right to rebel against you. Scarlet, who apparently is the name of the teacher, it's like, we should be strengthening our bodies and our minds, not just having to recite these poems in case somebody wants to raise this academy to the ground. And Maps is just like blown back, like, screw Eric, I don't give a crap about him, scratches out his name, and then starts writing in the book, saying like, I gotta find out who this new kid is, because he is absolutely badass and joined the team. And then Eric all of a sudden just like comes to, and he's like, what happened, what's going on? So Maps goes to talk to Olive. Turns out Olive is away for a little bit. Not much has really gone into it, but Professor McPherson's there and just like, oh, hey, don't worry about it. If you want to talk about something, you can talk to me. I can pass the message on. And she's like, oh, I just saw this cool new boy and I don't know who it is. And she's like, oh, that's Damian Wayne. So we cut down to him doing some martial arts and stuff like that out in the courtyard. Maps is watching from behind a statue and just like, oh my God, he's so cool. So she pulls out her notebook, pulls out the quill, and starts writing their names together as the Ultimate Power Team, and adds their name with a plus sign. And then all of a sudden, they start being drawn together. magnetically, and they don't know what's happening, but their hands interlink, and Damien's like, what are you doing? Let go of my hand this instant. She's like, I can't. They're stuck together. It's the quill. It's the magic of the quill. And he's like, what? Magic? That's stupid. What did you do? And she's like, oh, I just wrote your name down in the book. And he's like, how do you even know my name? And she's like, it's Damian Wayne. Don't worry about it. But then all of a sudden, a raven swoops down and steals the quill. And she's like, that's weird. So at that point, Damien's like, all right, now take your hand off mine or else. And then she's like, oh, I know who can deal with this magic stuff. I got a friend who's into spells. Let's go check that out. So they go over to Pommeline and explain that as soon as she wrote Maps and Damien in the book, all of a sudden their hands were drawn together, and it was using this quill. And they explain, yes, that was from the headmaster's office. It must be some sort of a magic quill. It's got some special thing going on. And Pommeline's just like, who else names did you write down? And she's like, Eric, but this didn't happen with him. I think it's to him. And it's like, oh, but he did stand up and try to defend you once the teacher was coming after you. Some kind of like low-level mind control. He was protecting you, which is probably what you wrote down in the notebook. So Maps apologizes to Damien, just being like, hey, I'm sorry, this is all my fault. I was just writing down the name because I thought we could team up. And Damien's just like, this has nothing to do with that. This is some other weird fluke of nature. Like, God only knows what it is. But if we can get to a science lab, maybe we can analyze. And then all of a sudden, Pommeline starts freaking out. And she pushes Damien and Maps out of her window. And they're several stories up, but Damien manages to grab hold of the window ledge, and he's like, hey, are you good down there? And she's like, yeah. And he's like, cool. In my belt, there's a grappling hook. And she's like, oh, you have a grappling hook. That's the best thing ever. And she literally has an entire, like, wedding sequence of her marrying this grappling hook. And she's like, hey, snap out of it. Fire it to that building over there. It latches onto the top of the building, and Damien swings over, holding onto Maps, and she's just like, this is the greatest day of my life. So they crash into a window. Once on the inside, they see her brother Kevin is there, or sorry, Kyle, and he's just like, oh, hey, Kyle's here. Don't worry about it. We're safe. But then Kyle starts attacking them as well, and Damien manages to use his acrobatics and all this training to dodge that and swing Maps to kick her own brother, knocking Kyle out. And Maps is like, hey, that was my brother, you jerk. Don't make me do that. And he's just like, he's fine. He's just unconscious. Not a big deal. But Maps uses Damien's hand to wipe her nose as revenge. And he's like, this is not helping us. Like, we just have random students attacking us, and you're just doing all this weird stuff. And then she just yells out ham, to which point he's like, all right, what, you want lunch? Is that what we're saying now? And she's like, no, that's Professor McPherson's dog, who earlier in the issue we saw was chasing after a raven. Let's use him. He can possibly hunt down the raven who stole the quill. So they go to McPherson, and she's like, oh my God, it's precious. You two are holding hands. And they're just like, shut up. We're not a couple. This is weird magic stuff or whatever. So she mentions that it reminds her of an old Scottish village tale called Innistree. And Damien's like, wait a minute, Innistree is where Castle Wayne originally was. And she recounts this tale of how there were a bunch of kids that were controlled by some magical force, and the children were under control of the Blackbirds. And there was a guy named Morgan Kilbeck who gave his life to help Batman take out all the birds by Castle Wayne letting go of hawks. And they took out all the birds. However, they never found the bird that laid the eggs that were like the final thing that they took care of. So they posit that the quill came from that bird, and that's why it's magical and whatnot. And Damien's like, that's weird, but no, that's not possible. It's just a coincidence. So they head out. They try to find where the raven is. They go out to the graveyard. All their friends are now zombified and like trying to attack them. Maps and Damien team up and do like a tripwire thing to take out the kids. They wrap them all up. We see that the dog manages to find the raven, still has the quill in its mouth, goes to attack it. It starts to fly away, and Damien pulls out a batarang. And immediately Maps is like, oh my God, is this kid Batman? That would be the best thing ever. So he throws the batarang, manages to knock the quill out of the bird's mouth, and suddenly Scarlet is there. I don't know if he was the Raven itself, but they're just like, oh, we should have known you were behind that. And he's like, not at all. That's not what it is. However, this industry quill carries the avian flu, and that's why all your friends were acting so weird. And he's just like, oh yeah, I figured that's what it was. Not something that my father, I mean Batman, dealt with years ago. And Maps is like, wait a minute, that doesn't explain why we can't let go of our hands, why we've been bound together this way. And he's like, what are you talking about? You two are just holding hands. That's not, you could let go whenever. And so they let go, and yeah, they could just let go. And he's like, I guess it wasn't a spell. And she's like, no, it was definitely a spell. It was magic. Like, we made a good team and all that. And then all of a sudden the headmaster comes in saying like, well, if you two were a team doing all these crazy things out in the middle of the graveyard in the middle of the night, how about you come with me? So he takes back the quill and he's like, this was taken out of my office. Miss Maps, I believe you're to blame. And then Damien stands up and says, nope, that's a Wayne family item. I was taking it back for my family. And yeah, it wasn't anything to do with Maps. And they share a nice little look for a second. And Headmaster's like, cool, you're expelled, Damien. Thank you for showing up for one issue. Now get out of here. And he leaves. Maps goes and gives chase and says like, hey, look, I got my notebook back. Somebody crossed out our names on the paper, which is the same thing that happened to free Eric from his spells. So I think it was magic. It was definitely magic, and someone crossed it out there. And he's like, no, magic, I don't think so, but here, take this. You might need it one day. And he hands her a batarang as he leaves, and she is just awestruck by it. Eventually McPherson comes up and she's like, oh, hey, wait, where did Damien go? I was too awestruck by the batarang. And McPherson's like, hey, Maps, we need to talk. This is about Olive. And that's the end of the issue. Who knows what's happening to Olive? I wish Damien would stick around a little bit longer. It definitely just felt like, we're just going to do this one thing and then we're going to move on. So, yeah, a little bit disappointed there. Art style's good. I do prefer the original art style. Carl Kerschel kind of just cemented in my mind as to how the series would look. But this one looks great as well. It's just not what I imagined for this series. And then the magic spell stuff. I mean, again, I think it would work better if we just extended it, made it an arc, had Damien stick around for a while. I think having it be a one and done, it just felt a little bit rushed. It's not bad by any means, and I really like Maps' reaction to this stuff, but it is still kind of like, just rushing through it. So I think I'm going to give this one a 7. It is good, art style still good, but there's a lot of things that I would point to and say this could have been maybe not done better, but could have been done differently in a way I would have personally preferred. Starfire #1, written by Amanda Connor and Jimmy Palmiotti, art by Emanuela Lupacchino. So first things first, we've got the sneak peek where we basically get the setup as to how the hell do we even get into issue 1. And we see Starfire is going around talking to various different people that I guess she knows. We have Caitlin Fairchild from the Ravagers. We've got Arsenal. I think it's Tim Drake Robin, which I don't know how she knows Tim Drake Robin, but regardless. Oh, God, what's her name? The one that's got Liddell, who has, like, white hair, and she's kind of a spooky ghost-esque type. Zatanna, and then also, I think it's Cheshire. And all of them are basically saying different things for Starfire to go to. They're saying like, hey, you sound like you're wanting to start a new life. That's kind of what you're asking us here. And here's different places that you might find interesting or different things that you might want to look into. And we see her sitting on a rooftop and she's like, well, there's only one person who's probably going to understand what I'm looking for. I hope he shows up soon. And in comes Superman. He flies in and he's like, hey, sorry, I heard that you wanted some advice, Starfire. And she's like, oh yeah, you can call me Corey. I showed up on this planet. I immediately got involved in the superhero stuff. Kind of be honest, don't really care for it all that much. And I kind of want to discover who I am outside of that. I want to start a new life. I really want to discover what it means to be a person, become a person of Earth. And you have managed to do that, so I thought I'd come to you for help. And Superman's like, oh yeah, no, totally. But like, you got to understand, I started that when I was a very young child. It's going to be a lot more difficult for you. And she's like, oh, I'm used to that. I literally was in slavery. Don't worry about it. So she starts talking about what she wants. She wants to deal without superpowered beings or like big world problems or whatever. And Superman's like, oh, did anyone suggest the moon? And it's like, oh, actually Essence did. That's her name, Essence. And she's like, yeah, should I consider that? And he's like, no, it was a joke. Don't worry about it. So she lists off a few more things. She doesn't want anyone to judge her based off her skin color. And she's like, that should be easy, right? There's so many different races. People must get along well. And Superman's like, maybe, but I think that maybe based off of your skin tone, you're going to want to go somewhere a bit more tropical. And she's like, I don't want to be on a desert island. I want to be around people. But like, I don't want to feel awkward or like I'm standing out. And she's like, all right, fair enough. I think I have a good idea as to somewhere you can go. Do you want me to make some calls? And she's like, nope, I'm all about survival. I want to do this on my own. I got a map here, point to where we're at, point to where I got to go, and I will deal with it. And Superman's like, okay, you want to go here? And she's like, oh, thanks so much. Anyway, I'm going to give you a hug now because that's part of a ritual of social binding or whatever. So she gives him a hug. He flies off and he's like, all right, time to head south. So we go to the sheriff's office of Key West, Florida, and Starfire basically walks in and says, hi, I'd like to speak to the person in charge. And the guy at the desk is like, she hasn't even had her morning coffee yet, and you are absolutely going to be messing up her day. But she's like, oh, whatever, I'll just go in. I'll knock first. And so she goes in, and we meet with Sheriff Gomez, who is the chief here, and she's on the phone as Starfire comes in. She's like, what the? And Starfire's like, hi, I'm Coriander, and I would like to make my home in Key West. So the issue begins normally. So Sheriff Gomez, whose name is Stella, she's basically like, okay, who are you? Give me the rundown. And we just get the whole history of Starfire. Planet attacked, invaded, her sister sold her into slavery to try to end the war. She was experimented on, she got some powers, and now she's come to Earth, and that's more or less the gist of it. And she shows off her powers for the sheriff, and she's like, okay, all right, that's insane, but yeah, sure. So she comes down, and she's like, okay, I don't have any actual work to do. This is my morning off until the afternoon, so let's go ahead and get this all settled. Do you have any money? And she's like, nope. And he's like, okay, well, do you have anything valuable? She's like, I have a collection of stones that I have from my home planet I've been carrying around. She's like, all right, let's go get those evaluated. So they go down to a jeweler. It's crazy. He's like, well, this one's a diamond. I got that much, but everything else here is just, that might be an egg, like a space egg for all I know, but it is definitely worth something. For the whole grand, not knowing what half the stuff is, I'll offer you 3 big ones. And the thing this book does is anytime someone does a turn of phrase, something that's a little bit weird, Corey gets a thought bubble that shows what it is. So when he says 3 big ones, she pictures 3 elephants. And she's like, oh, where would I even keep 3 big ones? And they're like, I don't know, in a bank or in your pockets. And then she pictures putting elephants into her pockets. And she's like, maybe a bank would be better. So sheriff's driving around, and Starfire starts asking questions about the sheriff, being like, oh, well, who are you? What's going on? That one guy called you Stella. And she's like, yeah, I was named after my grandmother. She passed away. She was 87, was battled with cancer. I miss her every day. And Starfire starts like tearing up, and she was like, oh, you miss her every day. That's so touching. And I know the missing feeling, it never ceases. And Stella's like, God damn it, you're going to make me cry. So they head out to a restaurant for some morning beers because sure, why not? And Stella gets on the phone with, I think, her brother, who works out on some sort of ship, like Coast Guard or something like that. And he's calling about a storm that seems to be picking up intensity. We'll get to that. But she makes the point of saying, hey, do you know if that trailer that so-and-so down the street is renting out, if that's still available? Meanwhile, we see Starfire's enjoying beers. She asks for some more, as do 2 other frat bro guys at a table next door. They start arguing and bickering over trying to get Starfire's attention. until eventually she loses interest in them to get more beer, and then they start fighting each other. As they're causing a ruckus, the sheriff's like, hey, I gotta go break up that fight, and Starfire's like, oh, no, let me do it. And so she uses a starbolt to just blow up the table, and immediately the guys are just like, okay, fine, Jesus, like, just, we'll do whatever you want, just keep her away from us. And the sheriff's just like, oh, you're going to pay back everything you owe for this destruction of property and all that to the bartenders and all that stuff. So one of them was commenting earlier about how, like, hey, I'll let you stay with me rent-free. And so Starfire goes up to him and be like, is that still on the table? And he's like, get away from me. So Starfire at this point is still walking around in her superhero costume, which is just a very short-cut tank top and, like, you know, the style of shorts. And just like, yeah, we need to get you some, like, actual clothing here, like pants. So they take some of the money, the $3,000, and buy some clothes. We see that the fashion person has given her a skirt and like a tie-off shirt, which immediately the sheriff is just like, didn't I say pants? Wasn't that part of the thing? And he's like, I am not going to hide those beautiful toned legs from the world. Are you kidding me? Meanwhile, she's gotten more calls from her brother. Apparently the storm is getting worse, and, you know, there might be some bad weather later on tonight. So they start walking their way over, and we get an entire breakdown as to, like, what high tide is and how Tamaran used to have weather controlling devices. And the sheriff's just like, could you build those here? And she's like, no, it requires the power of a sun to be able to make. So they go to this older woman who is going to rent them a trailer outside. Sheriff goes in, talks to her, just lays down the thing, being like, yeah, she's got the money, she's good for it. She's just new and out of town, she has nothing to her name, so she could really use a little bit of assistance. Meanwhile, as they step back outside for her to meet Starfire is making out with her grandson, who's watering the plants. And this grandson's just like, hey, Grandma, she said that kissing is how she learns languages. And the sheriff's like, but you already know English. Why were you kissing him? And Starfire's like, more English. So they go back around. Apparently there's a trailer in back that is painted with full Rastafarian everything, big old pot leaf and all that. And Starfire's like, oh, it's perfect. It smells like a Tamaranian bathhouse in here. So the sheriff explains how rent works, and they're on their way. We then cut out to the Coast Guard with this brother of Stella. His name is Sol, S-O-L, and he's able to smell on the winds that this storm is going to be a bad one. It's going to end up getting worse. And so there's two friends that are like trying to cheer him up, trying to be like, hey, come out, get drinks with us. And he's like, no, I'm going to stay here. And we find out through their discussion afterwards is that apparently he had a loved one named Maria, and it's been 2 years. However, he still hasn't moved on, and it seems to be something with storms. Something about storms triggers the bad memories of trying to remember her. And the girl, Maria's the name of the thing. I have no idea what the other one's name is. Ravina is basically throwing herself at Sol, but he's just not able to reciprocate because of his not being over Maria yet. So we then cut back to Starfire, who's taking a shower in the outdoor stall. As she goes to exit, she's wrapped her hair in a towel, but nothing else, to which the grandson, appreciating the view, is just like, you can't walk around naked. My grandma's not going to like that. We got to have some rules for living here. And she's like, okay, well, I'm going to go get dressed in my superhero outfit, and I'm going to go watch the sunset. And he's like, okay, but I can use some help back here boarding up the windows for the storm tonight. So she flies off. She watches the sunset. Then she looks back and sees the storm approaching, and she's like, hey, the grandson's name is Boone. Boone, do you need any help? And he's like, yeah, if you see a big old parrot flying around, go get him. His name's Birdie. He's my grandmother's like best friend. So we see Bertie the bird just flying around, and eventually Starfire gets a hold of him. Meanwhile, that night, apparently the storm gets upgraded to a tropical storm / hurricane, and so they've got to evacuate the whole island of Key West. Sol's calling in to his sister, the sheriff. Sheriff's telling the whole rest of the group, get the National Guard in here, evacuate everyone we can, get them off the island. It's going to be a long night. So we cut over to the grandma, Starfire, and Boone. Boone's like, I boarded up all the windows on the trailer as best we could, but like, it's a trailer. There's only so much that's going to be able to do. And the grandma's like, all right, well, close the door. We'll go ahead and get shelter. All of a sudden, the power goes out. There is a super loud ba-boom. All of a sudden, the Trailer seems to tip over, and Corey's just looking out the door as it's on its side, and she says Zal, which is of course her god name thing for Tamaran, and that's where the issue ends. Okay. I'm recognizing Amanda Conner and Jimmy Palmiotti's style. I recognize the chapter-esque storytelling where we don't need this cohesive narrative that flows throughout. We're just going to do literal like chapter breaks, because every time that I say and then it cuts to, it does have like a different chapter name on top of it. And that's not inherently a bad thing, but it is a stylistic choice I am recognizing very strongly here. I'm going to say I like this. I think the Lupacchino art's really good. I guess I appreciate that despite being a fish out of water story, it doesn't feel like they're making her a complete idiot. It feels like they're making her kind of just a blank slate, and then they are explaining things and she's getting it. It's not something where it's like, you know, they explain something somewhat poorly and then she just has this wrong interpretation of it for however long. Like, she's getting these things as they're being explained to her. And then, yeah, I appreciate the fact that it's not 100% in a way that like Harley Quinn kind of does, this relying on cheesecake and sexual identity and stuff like that. Like, we're able to do more with the character than just those kind of panels. So I think I'm going to give this one a 7, if only for the promise and the fact that I actually did kind of like reading it. I think that it has that much going for it at the bare minimum. So hopefully we can keep that up, or if anything, improve as we continue onwards. But Starfire is definitely good at this point. Red Hood Arsenal #1, written by Scott Lobdell, art by Dennis Medry. But before we get into the issue, we got the sneak peek where we see there's a giant mechanized Cobra bot. And it turns out that the Cobra cult, spelled with a K, has been planning for years, and they're going to take over civilization with the giant-ass Cobra bot. And we see everyone screaming, yeah, all hail Cobra, hooray, hooray. But in the middle of the group are two people who are like, can you believe this? This is crazy. And of course, it's Jason and Roy. Of course, they have infiltrated the group, and they're like, okay, well, this thing's going off in 10 minutes. We got 5 minutes to be able to stop the deaths of 30 million people. And so they move into a back room, and okay, so just up front here, this sneak peek and also the main issue has a couple panels where the speech bubbles are just clearly out of order. Like, it physically does not make sense the way that they are trying to talk unless you read it backwards. So they say, yeah, you know, Arsenal says he's got an idea, and Red Hood's like, oh, well, that'd be encouraging, except I know how your ideas go. So they go into a back room. Arsenal points out, anything that big needs cooling. Just let me mess around with the systems for a little bit. I can shut it down and the whole thing will overheat. You just stay by the door, make sure no one gets in. So Red Hood's just shooting all these Cobra agents as they start coming into the room. And then we cut ahead to them coming out of a sewer system. And he says, yep, there you go. Took down the robot. It's now just all this molten steel. And then as they're standing there, Jason says, hey, we still got to take out that lunatic and all of his followers. To which point the lunatic calls out and says, haha, you may have rescued the city, but you will still face the vengeance of Cobra. And then the pair go back into the fight. So that's the sneak peek. The gist of what we're getting in the series. It has nothing to do with what we actually go into, which is Arsenal sitting out in the desert, and he's just cracking one-liners literally to himself, saying like, all right, deep breaths, like, I did this stuff on my own before the group or anything like that. And we see he is watching a woman named Tara Battleworth, who is apparently a fixer from Washington. And she's come out here, and she's like, all right, well, you know, I've been keeping an eye on her. I know what's about to go down. And he literally has a framed photograph of him, Jason, and Starfire. And just like, oh, you know, we all moved on. Corey went her own way. God only knows where Jason is, but who needs him? Not me. Also me. So we see Tara's phone ring. it's Arsenal, and it says, please pick up, pretty please. And she picks up and she's like, hey, I already know who you are. I read the Interpol files. Let me talk to your boss. And she's like, what boss? And he's like, Red Hood. And it's like, Red Hood's not my boss. What are you? And he's like, all right, well, you got 5 seconds or else I'm going to hang up. And he's like, 5 seconds is not nearly enough. And so he's like, fine, whatever. Your deal that you've brokered here between the senator and this cartel is not going to work. You need to get out of here. This has all been a setup. And she's like, whatever, click. So at that point, we see a bunch of other cars drive up, and Arsenal's like, all right, well, guess I'm going to have to get involved. So turns out that the cartel shows up. They want to meet this senator guy who has a whole bunch of money. And Tara's like, hey, yeah, he's here. He's in the car. I just hope that you guys brought the package with you. So the senator gets out of the car and just like, hey, I told Tara there was no need for all this spy stuff. We can transact this in a gentlemanly way. So Arsenal's watching on from the side and just being like, oh yeah, that senator, I can smell the smarm off him half a mile away. So he steps up, and turns out this is all to get back a CIA spy who's been captured. So the senator comes up and is like, all right, let me see the man. And so they toss the CIA guy on the ground, and as they are about to hand over the money, well, they do hand over the money, but then also the senator gets captured. And Arsenal's like, of course he did. Of course that was always the plan. So all the other government agents are looking at the cartel guy like, let him go. We gave you the money like you asked. And it's like, yeah, that's when you had bargaining chips. Now, I have literally everything. I have the money. I have the senator. There's nothing you can do. And then we see the red arrow crash into the cartel car. It explodes out, causes everyone to go flying. And then I think it's an arrow for like darkness or like a smoke cover or something like that. But Arsenal's able to come in with some special night vision goggles. He starts kicking the cartel's ass. And he's like, oh, yeah, here I thought America never negotiates with terrorists, but here you guys are. So he comes in, he starts taking them out, being like, yeah, I know not to trust these guys, but I also read the undernet chatter. So I knew this was what they were planning. So he fires off a couple special arrows, one of which I think is like a magnetic arrow. It pulls away their guns or whatnot. And he's immediately, one of the CIA guys is like, oh, hey, wait a minute, I recognize you. You're Arsenal. I didn't recognize you without Red Hood, though. He's like, come on, man. I did have a career outside of him. So at that point, Arsenal goes to get the senator, but the senator just gets shot multiple times from the back. He falls down dead on the ground. Arsenal's like, oh, whoops, that wasn't part of my plan. So now the cartel guy's got Tara Battleworth in his gun sights, and it's just like, hey, drop your weapon or I'm going to kill this woman. And Arsenal's like, hey, we're cool. He starts throwing his stuff to the side, and as he puts his hand up, cartel guy turns his gun on Arsenal, but then all of a sudden the senator sits up, pulls out 2 laser rifles, and just unloads on the cartel guy. And as the senator gets up, he starts arguing with Roy, and Roy's like, really? Was that necessary? And he's like, yeah, apparently it was. To which point Tara's like, I'm sorry, hold on, Senator, how do you know this guy? And we decloak to reveal it was actually Red Hood the whole time. It's Jason. And he's like, yeah, I knew I had to come in here because you were going to strike out on your own, and emphasis on strike out. And he's just like, hey, come on, man, I just need some time to clear my head. He's like, yeah, well, you got it. And they start talking about Corey a little bit and how he's like broken up over the breakup. It's all a whole thing. But Tara's just standing there like, what the hell is happening here? What is going on? So Jason basically points out saying like, all right, so Roy, what's it going to be? Are you going to keep on moping or are you ready to get back to work? And he's like, I'm ready. Yeah, no, I'm cool. I want to be back in another book again. So Jason opens up the trunk of some van. Senator's bound and gagged inside. And it's like, yeah, he's fine. He'll be a little bit sore, but he'll be up. But yeah, we're keeping the money. The money that was meant for that trade-off, we were the ones who successfully did it. We're keeping the money now. And Tara's just like, yeah, that's fair. That's fine. Also, if you guys ever want to go legit, I could use people of your talents. And she passes over a card saying, give me a call. And Jason's like, oh, hey, man, what are you thinking? And Roy's just like, should we? Should we maybe give it a shot? And Jason's like, no, absolutely not. Fast forward 1 week. They're in the middle of a firefight in Paris, fighting off attacks of killer mimes. And he says, this is exactly why we don't do this for a living. And Arsenal says, well, you got to admit, being in this together is kind of fun. And Red Hood's like, you idiot. So, yeah. Okay. Heroes for Hire as a concept, I appreciate that more than whatever the 40 issues of Red Hood and the Outlaws was doing beforehand, because it was just kind of this vague superheroing without actually doing superheroing. It was like they just randomly come across stuff and they're like, oh, we gotta fight that now. I appreciate that this at least gives a little bit of a drive, a little bit of a reason as to why people who ostensibly would not want to get involved in anything that is not for their better nature would get involved for something that is not within their better nature. So, like, I appreciate it. Does this issue really do much? No. I think it's just more or less, hey, for anybody who wasn't reading Red Hood and the Outlaws but is thinking of picking this up, it's a new jumping on point. So, fair enough. But I just know I can't trust Scott Lobdell. I just know I can't do it. I don't want to. So, for this particular issue, especially with what I was talking about, the speech bubbles being mixed up and stuff like that, it's not a good issue by any base of the imagination. I'm going to say it's a 6, but like, I am expecting it to go worse from here, which is not good. Catwoman 41, written by Genevieve Valentine, art by David Messina, but first we get the sneak peek issue before that, which is kind of just a recap of the current standing. There is a gang war going on, and it was entirely just so Selina could get the upper hand over Black Mask. On her side, she still has Ward and Antonia. And then whenever the gang fighting gets too much, she takes over as Catwoman, goes out and fixes things. There's the 2 cops, Detective Keyes and Alvarez, who are on their case. And she hopes that they are, you know, going to be able to expose the corruption, but ultimately not get too involved in all that. And she's got Penguin on her side, stealthily, even though Black Mask thinks Penguin is on his side. And Eiko Hasegawa also fills in as Catwoman to some extent. So that's really the sneak peek. Like, it just tells you, here's the status quo, here's where we're going with it. So we pick up the issue at the Last Chance bar, where one of the Falcone guys is dropping off some money. It is teething money for Black Mask, Sionis, and turns out that someone broke in, stole the safe, like literally exploded it out of the wall, and they've got a new place to drop off now, but all the money that was previously in there is now completely gone to the wind. And immediately something is like, I did it. I had really tried to make it hard to make it look like it was a amateur job, because they're not supposed to know it was someone as stealthy and awesome as me. And we see after the drop-off was made, she's up in the ceiling tiles and she is exchanging the drop-off money for an exact amount to match it in the same bag, but they are sequentially numbered bills that are easily trackable. And she's like, no one's going to think to blame anybody because the money's all still there. So it is all going to be coming back. And the Sionis will be disillusioned with the Falcones, and he will come to us for protection, the Calabrises, and we will gladly provide it for a cost. So we see that they're at the opera. They're enjoying the show. After the show, Penguin comes up to Selina and is basically just reminding the audience. Selina's like, hey, we shouldn't be seen in public like this. And she's like, nobody cares. We're at the opera. All rich people are at the opera together. And then doesn't say anything, just like goes off on his own thing. So we then go back to the group and they talk about the play. They talk about the opera. It's the Borgias, who apparently all the mob children know about Borgias. And as we get back, Ward's like, yeah, I don't know it, but like, it's an opera. Everybody dies. So when we get back, he says, look, whether or not the Falcones managed to figure out it was us who switched the money or Sionis or anything like that, we got bigger problems. Batman is dead. And we point out the thing of Batman dies in battle with Joker and all that. And Selina's just like, okay, whatever. Someone's going to take advantage of that. Not a big deal. Find out what Black Mask thinks. I don't care what the Falcones think. It's more important what he's thinking about this. But yeah, I'm going to head off to bed. And as she makes her way up the stairs, like, she stumbles a little bit, and when she's out of sight, she just breaks down. She just starts crying. She gets up to her room. Eiko's there in her Catwoman suit, and she just cries on Eiko's shoulder for a while because, you know, Batman's dead. So We cut over to a diner where a cop has been killed, or an ex-cop, a PI or something like that. I'll be the first to admit I don't fully understand what this story beat's doing here, but we get Alvarez and Keyes investigating this PI who died here. And on the TV's talking about, you know, the new bat suit, the bat robot, and all that sort of stuff. But they go to this PI's office, investigate who he was investigating, because obviously that would be a first place to see someone who would want him dead. And he's got like tons of cases on infidelity and adultery and stuff like that. And they realize, like, well, we're going to have to start taking these here, and that's just going to be our life for a while here. And they briefly talk about how like if they don't do this, then it's going to be dead ends for the rest of their careers. Again, I feel like I missed something, but regardless, they're saying, yeah, Catwoman's helping where she can. We just need to get some names off this list. So we cut over to Black Mask as he's watching the new Bat Blimp go over town, the one that the Powers Corporation runs, and he's like, oh, it's beautiful. I have enough control over certain cops in the area that we can use Batman against the Calabrese family. He's going to be great because he works with the police now. We just point him in the right direction. And Cobblepot's there, as well as Hasegawa. And they're basically just, like, Cobblepot's trying to guide away. He's just like, look, if you had used Batman to take out the Calabreses, we wouldn't have half the people that we have with us now, because you would have been killing potential future allies. It's best not to get those people involved in all this. So they kind of just banter back and forth, and Black Mask basically says, like, well, look, when we tried to kill Selina at City Hall, the Falcons were the trigger men, and there's no way that the Falcons are ever going to be welcomed back into her good graces. And Penguin's just like, oh, of course not, definitely. So we cut over to the Falcons in front of Selina, basically saying, like, we're super sorry. Like, look, I'll be the first to admit when we make mistakes and whatnot. We haven't always agreed. I'm a loyal family man, but, like, Black Mask is bad news, and I don't want any part of that. We're hoping that we can come to some sort of an agreement. And Selina's just like, I'm still a little bit salty about you wanting to kill me, so this is going to be on Antonia. Whatever she says, go with. And Antonia's just like, cool, bring us the man who tried to kill Selina as a corpse, and then we'll start talking. So Selina goes up into her room, starts getting into, like, Catwoman gear. Eiko's already in there, and she's like, I thought that you were going to be cool with the Falcons. I thought you wanted them to be on your side. And she's like, yeah, but it's better that people think I'm still pissed off, because that gives me an excuse to not be around for all of the incessant meetings coming up. And she's like, oh, all right, clever. So they head out and they look up at the balloon, and it's just like, yeah, I hate that balloon up there. Just it's unnerving that Batman is now like a cop. It's not right. So at that point, Eiko goes jumping off, and she's like, yeah, I'll go take care of things out there. You don't worry about it. So as Selina comes back in, Ward's standing there, and he's like, so I suppose Catwoman would know exactly how the Falcon's money got switched up. And she was like, well, I'm not going to beat around the bush here. Yeah, I made them do what I wanted them to do. I operated a bit out, and that's all that happened. And Ward's basically hanging over that the fact that Selina's Catwoman seems to not be common knowledge, or at the very least the fact that she is still operating with this new Catwoman. And Ward's just basically like, Antonia would hate that you lied to her, that you got all this. And she's like, well, Antonia doesn't need to know. Half of this entire industry is being dishonest with each other. If it's for the greater good, it's for the best of this family. And Ward basically is like, look, whatever game you're playing, you are the head of this family. I don't want this to be just something that you're doing on the side where Catwoman is going to be your main thing. This needs to be your focus, and don't move these pieces around if you don't have an end game in mind. So at that point, he then says, like, if you take risks like that, you're going to end up getting removed. And she says, by them or by you? And he just says, good night. So as we leave off on that, Selina gets into her Catwoman outfit and is like, okay, my number one priority right now is I can accept that Batman is dead if I know for sure. So I'm going to go out and I'm going to find out what happened to Batman, and God help anyone who gets in my way. And so she leaps off the building, and theoretically, I guess that's what she's going to do. So we are just going to continue on from the last arc. It's not that it is bad by any means. If anything, I think that we slimmed down the pieces enough, we removed enough of the other families, and especially with that sneak peek kind of lining everything up, it makes it very clear that the 3 players are Sionis, the Calabreses, and the Falcones. And then we've got a couple other tiny things within that, but for the most part, that's all you really need. So I like that. I like the slimming down. It makes the stakes very clear as to what it needs to happen next and all that sort of stuff. I just hope that if we're going to be doing a thing of Selina trying to come to terms with the death of Batman or something like that, that it's at least a bit more intertwined with this story than completely separate. Because if it's completely separate, I'm going to have less to care about this plot. The only reason I'm caring is because Selina is in it. If it's these side characters, if it's Ward and Black Mask and all that, I'm not going to care as much. So that's my only hope moving forward. Next cover has a spoiler on it, Stephanie Brown, so I'm sure that'll have some interesting ramifications based off of Batman Eternal. But regardless, I think this one is going to be I'll say 7. I'll give it it's close, it's squeaking by, but it's still at least a 7. Harley Quinn number 17, written by Amanda Connor and Jimmy Palmiotti, art by Chad Hardin. But first we got the sneak peek, which came a month prior, and it is basically just, here's what the gang of Harley is. If you remember that in the previous few issues, we've been setting up this idea where she's building a gang of vigilantes to work under her as sort of a get-rich-quick scheme. We get all of their names for everyone who has been brought in here. So I'll just very quickly go over a few of them. One of them is born in the Bronx. Her name is Harley Quinn. And they all make the point of saying, hey, wait a minute, that's close enough to my name that, like, how is it protecting my identity? Because her name's Carlita. We don't address it. Moving on. One of them is Hannah Borgman, the niece of Cy Borgman. She will be Harlequin instead of Harlequin because she's Jewish. Ha ha ha. One of them is Harley Queens because she grew up in Queens. We get the one male one who is going to be Harvey Quinn. We get one that is especially violent who is from the Lower East Side of Manhattan. And she's Indian, so she is Bali Quinn. We then get a little interstitial here where we find out that we're tracking the mayor, and it turns out the mayor's taking a lot of bribes and stuff. So that's happening. We also have a set of quintuplets who join in because they are, of course, quintuplets. They don't get names yet, but one of them's especially weird and seemingly either drunk or insane. We then get the big one, the more muscular one, whose name is Harlem Harvey. And then we get the blind girl in a wheelchair who she suggests the name Handicapped Harley, but then has to be reminded that her name is Coach, because she's the kind of the person behind the computer for the whole team. So everyone goes down their own way. Apparently they're getting paperwork based off of how much stopping any particular crime costs in their network. And they are allowed to barter and trade and always help out like the homeless or the disadvantaged. So as they get outside, a old lady is about to have her bag snatched by a couple of purse stealers. Coach grabs a metal pole and just throws it, takes out both of the motorcycle drivers all at once. And she's like, yep, well, that's a freebie, but that would normally cost $1,600. So yeah, that's basically where the sneak peek ends. It basically says, hey, we got that thing about the mayor, we're all set. So we cut to 4 a.m. in Brooklyn, where some hardware store is sending out people to steal trash cans, I guess to drum up more business. And as they're trying to take away this one trash can that Harley is hiding inside, she comes out with some hammers, immediately smashes one of their heads in, and goes to attack the rest of them, but they start driving off. So Harley calls for her gang, at least a couple of them. One of them has a rocket launcher, aims at the car, it swerves out of the way, so then another one pulls out a machine gun and just starts firing like crazy, shooting multiple shots through their bodies. And they're like, we surrender, please, for the love of God, just arrest us, that's all we want, okay? And they ask who they are, and she introduces them as Harley Quinn and the gang of Harleys. So they apparently they were hired by some old lady who was sick of having her trash cans stolen, and the only thing she can offer up is a large rooster that they are going to give a good home. So there's that. We then have Harley go over to the mayor's office, and she has bound and gagged the security guy as the mayor comes in, and she's smoking a cigar, commenting on, like, how can anyone smoke this stuff? It sucks. But she basically says, look, I've got a gang of vigilantes. You're going to let us operate, or else I'm going to bring to light all of the bribes and other skeevy things that you have done that we have on the record here. And I'll go to the Times and they'll run with it. And he's like, all right, fine, whatever. But, like, you got to understand that this is a city of the law. If I see any of your guys breaking the law, we're going to treat them like any other criminal there. And then she makes the point again of saying how she'll go to the, like, Times. So I don't know whether or not that threat's still being followed up on, but it comes up later. So regardless, she storms out and she's like, yeah, all right. Then we go out to sea, where we meet Captain Horatio Strong, who is not Popeye the Sailor Man, for legal purposes and legal purposes only. And it turns out that he has some kelp that is tangled in the rudder of his ship, so he jumps off, untangles it, it's glowing for some reason, and he decides to eat it. And then all of a sudden he starts feeling sick, and his eyes start glowing green. So then we go to a fancy restaurant on the East River. We have that guy, whatever's, no, not Mason. Yeah, Mason. Mason is the guy who Harley was interested in, the daughter of Missy McCobb. And they're on a date. They're just kind of sharing their backstories and all that. Harley says how she has 3 younger brothers and how she misses them, hasn't talked to them in a while, and how her parents moved down to Florida and she's got to go visit them at some point, whatever. And Mason talks about how he's been in and out of the system, his own dad left, blah, 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 whole bunch of stuff. And as they start getting closer, really starting to understand each other and seeing how much they have in common, all of a sudden a police chopper is outside the window of the restaurant saying, come out with your hands up. They both think that they've been caught for their own respective crimes, but it turns out this is here for Mason, who of course broke out of jail and is wanted for murder. So he's like, look, Harley, just let this happen. I'll get my day in court, whatever. Just talk to my mom, let her know what happened here. So she's like, oh, okay, you know, I'm thinking back to what the mayor said about anything, you know, if any of us do anything totally illegal, we'll be locked up. I'd love to just beat up all these cops and rescue my boyfriend, but I can't do that. I got people relying on me. So we got to the next morning, and her beaver reminds her that she needs to go tell Mason's mom about what happened. As she goes to her door in just her underwear, like 3 stories ago, she was buying parakeets, and now the parakeet salesman shows up and says, hey, here's your stuff. She accompanies him up to the roof where he comments on her ass, and then they let all the parakeets go into the sky, but then they all suddenly swarm back, land on Harley's arms, and she says, ah, it tickles. And then they all mimic her by saying, ah, it tickles, and she just laughs about that. And then she says, yeah, and then a backfiring card caused them all to fly away, and that's it. Like, that's the end of the parakeet arc. So they go down, they talk to Mason's mom, and she's like, hey, yeah, you know, we've got a good lawyer. I get it. He's been in some trouble before. They also say something about the fact that the murder charge was for the mayor's son. I don't remember if that was covered before, but regardless, it's here. And Tony reminds Harley, like, look, okay, you said your thing. We got to go meet with the girls in 20 minutes. So as they're walking down, Tony reassures her, hey, don't worry about it. Mason's resourceful. He'll figure this out. Harley says she's got skate club tonight. Got to go check on how the girls are doing. Meanwhile, we see the quintuplets are training with Eggsy, and the drunk one, the weird one, is like, why am I fighting Humpty Dumpty? This is totally crazy. And one of them comments that she smells like Willie Nelson's beard, and she's like, oh, I wonder if you could smoke that. And she gets hit on the head, and Coach comes in and says, hey, we got a call about some woman whose sailor husband is out missing, and she's willing to charge double the rate to find him. So Harley's like, okay, yeah, go send out a crew, go see what's up. So we see Harlem Harley and Harvey Quinn, I will never remember these names past these issues, I hope that's understood, are at an old sailor bar, and Harvey's like grandstanding on a table saying like, hey, someone tell me where I can find this guy, and whoever tells me blah blah blah. And everyone's just like, dude, what are you doing? No one's going to tell you anything. This is a rough and tumble bar, and you are flamboyantly over the top. And so Harvey grabs the bartender's chest hair and threatens to rip it out, and he says, go for it. And so he does, and the bartender says, I haven't felt anything beneath the neck since 78, unlike you. And he throws Harvey out of the bar. In comes Harlem Harley, who comes up and is basically like, hi, sorry about my friend over there. We're looking on behalf of a wife, if you've seen Horatio Strong. And so it's like, oh yeah, why didn't you say so? He's in the bathroom. So they make a joke about how the bathroom's disgusting. Harvey goes in there trying to find him. He ends up gagging out because of how disgusting the place is. So Harlem has to go in. And as they go back, she reaches the very last stall. And as she knocks, she's like, all right, whoever's in there, come on out. All of a sudden, Horatio busts out through the wall and says, you know, I'm going to swab the deck with all of you. And Harvey's on the phone with Coach saying, you better get the rest of the gang over here now. And he looks like Popeye. I really want to make that clear. He is 100% Popeye. I don't understand legally how they can get away with that. Okay. I'm going to keep this real brief. Nothing has changed. This is not a new era for Harley. She now has a gang, and all this has done is changed an overly large cast into a significantly overly large cast. So, am I going to keep track of any of these characters? No. I have no idea how I'm going to be able to even keep any of these plot lines in mind. The fact that we still have a job she has to go to, the roller derby. Now we have all of these different moving parts of different characters we're following independent of Harley. It's going to be insane if any of this works in even a minor level. I don't think we're going to get any movement on any plots at all. So, yeah. 5.5. I'm not going to pretend like I like it. It's just kind of a chore to get through at this point. 5.5. All-Star Section 8, number 1, written by Garth Ennis, art by Dave McCrease. So first off, we've got the sneak peek, which does not do much more to answer my questions. We go to a dog pound where there is a man breaking out of a dumpster behind it. Some voices are recognizing who this man is, and they're like, oh, hey, we got to talk to him. Let's do it. And the other voice is like, no, shut up. And finally they call him out, and they call him Dog Welder. I'm just going to skip to the point. He welds things with dogs. So they say, hey man, don't worry about it. We're heroes like you too. And we see these three voices. The guy mainly talking is the Grappler. There's another guy next to him who is a pile of human organs called Guts. And then another guy who has a bunch of like mechanical tools strapped to his body, and he's named Power Tool. And they say, yeah, you know, that's our whole shtick. But you remember Section 8? And they talk to Dog Welder about Section 8. And they say that we just got the call. Your old team or whatever, they're getting it put back together. However, last time, a bunch of your members died. And we thought that included you. That's kind of weird that you're still around. But regardless, we're on our way over right now for membership because we applied years ago, but there had to be 8. Like, that was what Six Pack said. So that's what we did. So anyway, they show Dog Welder there, and the one guy saying like, yeah, no, but like seriously, didn't you die when Six Pack and you guys had to go and you faced whatever, and Six Pack sacrificed himself to save the world? He was a hero. He even has a statue up in a park somewhere. And Grappler's just like, hey, Power Tool, shut up. Like, he's not dead. He's here. Dog Welder, he's one of the best. So yeah, we're going to be Section 8 and we're going to be right there with you. And he puts his arm around Dog Welder and he says, we're going to be together in the never-ending battle against crime. And then we get screaming and hissing noises as we see that Dog Welder has welded the corpses of 3 dogs to each of Guts, Power Tool, and Grappler. And that's just the sneak peek. So we go into the main issue and we get the Trinity, Superman, Wonder Woman, Batman, fighting against a whole bunch of things. And the narration is all epic and heroic and saying like, oh yes, these heroes, they go out and they fight and they do these crazy things and they're incredible in their own right. But when they're alone and they speak about the people that they admire, there's only one name on their lips, Section 8. And we see the original Section 8, which consists of a bunch of different people, but as far as I'm concerned, the only ones you need to know are Six Pack, who is a guy who's drunk, Dog Welder, who welds dogs to things, and Bueno Excelente, who's a dude in a trench coat, and as far as I could tell, naked otherwise, and doesn't get any more explanation in this issue. So they go in, and it turns out that, you know, the day that they came into battle, the Six Pack stood and he sacrificed himself to save the world, and none of that has anything to do with Sidney Speck, this guy who works at a New York art gallery, and he's sharing this story with all these people, and he's so well read and so well learned. And we see some people standing off to the side being like, God, Sidney's just, he's so cool. He's the best. Isn't he great? And then a guy takes a sip out of his drink and he's like, wait a minute. I thought there was supposed to be vodka in my drink. And the other guy's like, oops, sorry. I must have mixed your drink up with Sidney's. But then they're like, wait a minute. Sidney's a recovering alcoholic. He never ever touches a drink. And as soon as he takes a sip, he immediately starts just going insane. He's ripping off his shirt, his pants, he's projectile vomiting everywhere. Everyone's like, Sidney, what the hell is going on? He's freaking out. He's yelling, Starro, Eclipso, Sinestro, Amazo, Villains Month. He smashes a glass into a guy's face, and he's like, I see it all now. And he runs over, grabs a bottle of booze, starts chugging it, and they're all like, Sidney, in God's name. And then all of a sudden he comes to, and he's in full six-pack outfit, and he's in the middle of a bar. I think it's Noonan's bar. I don't know. There's a dude sitting at the bar, and his name is Hacken, I believe. And he's just reading a book. He's just minding his own business. Behind the bar is this demon hellspawn that just yells out, I am Baitor. Baitor is me. Don't ask questions. We will get nowhere. So Six-Pack sits down and he's like, hey, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I know there's a threat and I have to stop it, but I don't know what to do. And then he has a flashback to his entire team dying, and he's like, that's right, I have to put together a team. But we all got wasted at the climax of the last one, except for Bueno Excelente. He's still alive, but that guy creeps me out, so I don't want to call him. So he pulls out a little notepad that has the numbers for all of these people who applied to Section 8 before. Baitor hands Six-Pack his phone and is asking what's up, and he's like, yeah. And he goes through and just lists off a whole bunch of names that I'm sure are really important to people who read the Hitman series. And he's like, man, nah, barely any of these are good at all. Who does that leave? So he calls in, as we saw in the sneak peek, Guts, the Grappler, and Power Tool, as well as Dog Welder and Bueno Excelente, which brings the team up to 6. But then Six-Pack looks at Dog Welder and he's like, wait a minute, didn't you die? Also, I didn't think that you were, and he like thinks for a second, and then Dog Welder turns on his welding tools and he's like, all right, never mind, whatever. So he's like, all right, we got 6 out of 8. We got to get more. Where could we get someone else? And then Baitor just starts screaming behind them, like pointing to himself. And Six-Pack's like, no, I can't think of anybody. Nothing's coming to mind. Until finally Hacken's like, Six-Pack, why don't you use Baitor? His whole thing is that he is apparently the demon lord that represents criminal insanity. And he also is able to shoot big wads of disgusting white fluid that hardens around people before they crumble into dust. So now he's part of the team. He's got a costume and he says, I am Baitoro. So he's like, all right, that's still only 7. We need an 8th. It's Section 8. And Six-Pack looks out the window and sees the Batmobile. And he's like, that's it. And he runs out in the street to go talk to Batman, crapping his pants the whole way there, literally. And when he finally reaches Batman, he's like, hey, Batman, remember? It's me, Six-Pack. Look, there's a threat. We're going to need some real muscle on the team. And I was thinking a real heavyweight like you, that's... And then Batman just walks off to the side and like walks away. And he's like, what, Batman? And then they do this thing where the artist takes panels of Batman from like pre-New 52, like 80s Crisis-era books, and he just slaps them into the book. So like Batman's in his blue cowl at this point, and the reason that he was leaving Six-Pack alone was because his Batmobile was parked in a no parking zone and he's being written a ticket. And he's like, oh, I just needed to go to the ATM. I couldn't use a bank elsewhere because they charged $3 surcharge. Can you believe that? That's crazy. Robbery. And the guy's like, yeah. And so he writes this ticket, and they take another panel of Batman getting his back broken, but they phrase it as in like, I'm bent over backwards trying to help you people. Now, the person writing the ticket is black. So immediately the person's like, oh, what, you people? And Batman's like, what? No, I didn't mean it like that. I meant like people of Gotham, people in general, but not like you people. And then they take the panel of Death in the Family of Batman holding Jason Todd's corpse, put Six-Pack in his place, and Batman says, but I'm not a racist. I swear I'm not a racist. And then he gets handed the ticket anyway. And so everyone's watching in from the inside of the bar, watching Batman get this ticket. And Six-Pack's like, okay, anyway, Batman, we would really like a member of the JLA to join our team in order to stop this threat. We really think it's a big deal. Do you think maybe you could help us out? And Batman just points the ticket and says, like, this is some real bullshit, you know that? This right here. And he just scoffs, gets in the Batmobile, and drives off. That's the goddamn issue. What in the hell did I just read, man? Okay, for anyone who doesn't know Section 8, apparently, Garth Ennis' creation, as far as I'm aware, there was a event called Bloodlines where they invented a whole bunch of new heroes, none of which stuck around except for a guy named Hitman. Hitman was Garth Ennis' creation, went for about 60 issues, and out of that spun this horrific group of heroes called Section 8. And now they're back. Okay? All right, do you gather what I'm saying here? I don't want to understand this book. Honestly, I think I'm having more of an interesting time just trying to keep up. I think that's kind of half of this, where it's like, this is insanity to the nth degree. Like, whatever. Score? I don't know. It's somewhere between a 0 and a 10, but like, it feels like it belongs on a completely different scale. I'm going to say 6, because I'm scared to go anywhere else. God help us next month. I have no idea what I'm going to do. And that's it. That is all the comics that came out from DC Comics this June 10th, 2015. And next week is another 12 comics, most of which are new. I'll tell you what, man, new number ones are always difficult because I feel like I have to explain all of the characters and stuff of that going into it, and it always takes just a little bit longer. So as much as I thought that this week as a whole was going to be nice and light because it's like 12 comics, 11 comics, 10 comics by the end of the month, it's taken like 2 hours to do each episode, and it's driving me insane. But regardless, comics coming out next week. Let's take a look at them. So we've got, in no particular order here, Black Canary, Harley Quinn / Power Girl, Robin, Son of Batman, Superman / Wonder Woman, Sinestro, Justice League of America, that is the Brian Hitch one, Martian Manhunter, Wonder Woman, Secret Six, Dr. Fate, Doomed, and, drumroll please, Prez #1. Why do I say drumroll please? I love that comic. If you listen to last week's episode, I gushed over Omega Man for a while there. Imagine that times 30, and you almost approach what I'm at with Prez. I am going to spend so long just kind of gushing over every aspect of that comic. It is so well written. It is a crime what they did. They canceled it. How dare they? Anyway, so yeah, that is all the stuff coming out next week. I'll won't bore you with all the Prez details yet, but next week, you watch out. That'll probably be what I title the episode. Yeah, I really don't have anything else to say. In terms of new comics, I mean, it's most of them. Dr. Fate, Doomed, Prez, JLA, Martian Manhunter, Black Canary, Harley Quinn, and Power Girl, and Robin. All of those new comics. So be on the lookout. Beyond that, I don't really have anything else I need to add on here at the end, so if you have any comments on any of the comics I talked about this week, last week, we could all go ahead and hit them up in the comments down beneath the video if you're watching that version. If not, you can check the description, and we've got tons of other places you can hit us up. We've got a Discord, we got a subreddit, we got a Patreon. Pick and choose whichever one you want. We are looking out for your opinions so that we can promptly ignore them. Not really. We are actually pretty good at responding to things as long as you're like, you know, saying anything relevant and not, OMG, you're so right. By the way, check out this link for great prices. Shut up, man. We all know you're a bot. Anyway, that's going to do it for me. Thank you very much for watching, listening, however it is consume this podcast. Be sure to tune in next week. And always try to remember, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.